Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast. This is episode 81, Cranium Command. We'll be taking you back and going inside of the head of a 12-year-old boy and seeing what that was all about in the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Sitting in with me, as always, coming in from Tampa, Florida, Mr. Hal Bowers. How are you doing tonight?
Aloha, I'm doing fine.
And I ran out of things for Tampa and the general area, so you're just getting called Tampa tonight. I'll go research some new areas. Yeah,
I think we called it Chicken Town. I think that's one you might have missed.
Chicken Town. Okay.
Chicken Town. I don't know.
I didn't know that one. Okay.
If you get to pile of chicken, I thought Chicken Town would be
Chicken Town. All right, there it is.
Yeah, Chicken Town.
And coming in from Ohio, Mr. JT Kuzier. How are you today, JT?
I am good. I'm excited for this episode. One of my favorite Wonders of Life attractions as a kid seeing. I like when we go to Epcot and actually know what you guys are talking about a little bit instead of remember when they had an audio book you could sit there and listen with real headphones. This one is I remember sitting in this theater, so I'm excited.
You don't remember Walter Cronkite, Spaceship Earth. You don't remember all the AT&T stuff.
No.
That's right. That's why we're here, JT. You know,
yes.
you can ask the questions and we bring back the memories. So
exactly.
And coming in tonight with, I love the t-shirt, Brian. It's got to be something you got at Sesame Place. Your Oscar the Grouch shirt coming in from Philadelphia, the relatively close home to Sesame Place. So how are you tonight?
Greetings and salutations. I've had this Oscar the Grouch shirt forever. In fact, he's starting to like splinter and stuff. But I'm just keeping him going.
That's a distressed Oscar.
Keeping him going. Yes, hello there from the NFC East champion Philadelphia Eagles home. They go into the Super Bowl tonight, and that is the extent of my sports input. I will once again be out of town as Howard and I watched them win the Super Bowl after dinner in Tampa last time when they won the Super Bowl. We were the only two people at the bar at Cheddar's watching them finish the game and win the Super Bowl. So
you might get to do it again. So.
Well, no, I'll be in the Bahamas the day that they're playing the Super Bowl. So good luck to them.
How would you fly down to Bahamas? You can be with Brian.
Sure, as long as there's a Monte Cristo sandwich and a painkiller there, I'm there.
That was our dinner. That was our dinner that night.
That's funny. All right, well, gentlemen, this is going to be our third episode on Wonders of Life, or
I know what a trilogy. I know what a trilogy is, but what's a four-parter?
Quadrilogy?
I don't know.
That's right. To be concluded. It's a
four-part series, and this is the third of 4 parts.
So. There we go. All right. Well, JT, before we get to the main topic, as always, you run out to the mailbag. It's always full. We've got some great comments that came in the past month. So what do we got in there?
So first off, this is from John in Texas. He says, "Hi guys, I'm wondering if any of you all have any memories of the Millennium Village that was in Epcot for the year 2000. I can remember as a 10-year-old thinking that Scotland mini golf attraction was the coolest thing in the entire park at the time. I know they've used the building for other special events and during Food and Wine since in 2009, I was a cast member in Inventions and they would serve Epcot cast appreciation meals in there. One time they served us the best duck sausage I've ever had, but I couldn't find that on any Walt Disney World menu, and still haven't. All of that to say, was Millennium Village a neat attraction, or was it only something a 10-year-old would like?
I assume we can all have our input here. I can give my one recollection.
Yeah, that's what we're looking for.
I was in my ride phase as an adult where, we were doing the commando thing where we rope dropped the park and, we'd go balls to the wall all day and try to ride everything. So I remember finding, when we were led into the Millennium Village, like it was like being at a bad trade show for me. Like just kind of walking through because these countries had their like they were little booths, right? Like, I don't remember enough about it anymore. I look forward to us doing an episode on that because it will be teaching me, because I just don't remember. The building is still there. Yes, we've all been in it for D23 events and all, but I just don't remember it. Other than being very bored and wanting to get out of there to go on rides.
So that's all you remember.
Yep.
I remember walking and seeing it. I think I said in one of the other previous episodes, I was walked in. I was enjoyed it, but was disappointed. So,
well, they didn't give you 10 lobsters when you walked in, so you didn't enjoy it. Like,
all right, there, Smarty. All right.
And shower you with gifts and chestnuts and
chestnuts.
You mean to tell me they're not roasted?
What do you remember about Howard? Were you in your not going phase that time?
That was my, I am sick and tired of the crowds and the prices, and I'm not going during this time period. So no, I didn't see the Millennium Celebration or the whatever that parade was, Tapestry of Nations. I missed out on that entire thing. So
the only thing I recall about it existentially was the controversy over the Israel pavilion being included. And there being Muslim nations that didn't want to participate if Israel was going to be included in it. And Israel was included in it. It wasn't there. So I kind of remember that being part of the news at the time.
All right. Well, there you go. So that's our recollection. And it's used for various things now still, right? Wasn't it just a temporary tent almost? And it's held on.
Really was pretty much a tent when you think about it as a glorified tent. We attended Epcot 35, gentlemen, was held in there, right? Yeah. That was in there, and there's a couple other things.
Disney held both, or D23 held both Epcot 30 and Epcot 35 there.
Yep.
And
it's always open during Food and Wine as a venue to get stuff, and they usually have a piano player inside and a bunch of booths. So the space still serves a purpose.
Okay. Well, thanks, John. There's appreciate your letter. Guess what? Got another letter from another John. This one, though, is an update. So cue the Unsolved Mysteries theme when they have an update. John wrote us, this is back in October, and he was very curious about the Smellitzer in Living with the Land, a machine that shoots barnyard odors across your nose as you sail past. Well, John sent us a little update in January, still digging into this, and he actually sent us just a Epcot Center YouTube video from 1983, and I won't put a link here, but about the 28-minute mark, there is a woman on the ride, and they're in the barnyard scene, and she says, "Smells like a barn." Was she just commenting? Was she actually smelling? Who knows? But he says perhaps this is where the smelter was actually located. It would make sense, given there's plenty of real estate in that scene to put the equipment and keep it hidden from view since construction. So not sure, but you can listen for yourself and see if the smelter's there. We're still on the hunt for this barnyard smell, if anybody has a personal recollection. But that's John right there for you.
I actually had a comment on that too, JT. Was that, I was thinking about that. We talked about last month how that maybe the smelter smell, we were wondering what barnyard was. I thought that if the wind was right and the air currents in there, that hay smell could have come up to the restaurant. And I don't know about you, but I don't want a hay or a barnyard where I'm about to cut into my steak.
Well, that's what Brian said. He found it hard to believe because, the restaurant's rolling by there. And
yeah. Just I don't know. Just saying.
Yeah,
Again.
I mean, that's now, has that always been character dining?
No. Originally, it was just a nice.
It was just a
to sit
classy
down.
it was just a classy rotating restaurant originally.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So-
Confession room here. I've never eaten there, so I may have to.
Your kids would love it. I mean, I mean, the food is good. It's a fun time. The character interactions are good. So
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, guess what? Another letter from another John. If you notice a trend here,
All right.
we've been talking pretty regularly about time capsules, and John wrote us a little update, a little info. I mentioned the Nickelodeon Studios time capsule. We're going to step away here from it, from Disney property. And we mentioned the Nickelodeon time capsule being removed and never found again, but it was moved to the Nick Hotel. And then when that was closed, they've moved it to Nickelodeon Animation Studios in California. Interestingly enough, while the time capsule allegedly remains and won't be open for another 20 years, the cover was auctioned off. I guess they had looking like a manhole cover on the ground there.
I recall that. Yeah.
That sold for $19,000.
Whoa.
I happen to have it right here.
It'll be at Retro Magic.
At some point, I think I had my picture taken with it because I believe it was put in place on my birthday, April 30th. So then at some point, it's like I took a picture next to it since it had my birthday on it. So
why not?
A vague recollection. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Besides Retro Disney, he's a big classic Nickelodeon fan. He's got quite a collection of shows and that. He brought up Double Dare because if there's a show not available out there and you have any interest, let him know and he can send us an episode. So and even recommended a book about Nickelodeon's history, which is right in that time period when people my age were into the Disney parks. Universal Studios was actually like a studio, and you could see the big slime thing out front and the time capsule and all that. So but the time capsule is still sitting, and we're always on the hunt for a good new time capsule. So
that was definitely a period of time when Nickelodeon was kicking Disney's butt as far as attracting kids, because kids were way more into the Nickelodeon stuff than they were Disney things at that point. So that's a neat era, because there was quite a tussle back and forth. And I think with Playhouse Disney, they finally started to get the kids back in Disney XD, but Nickelodeon absolutely ruled the kids' airwaves for 5, 6, 10 years during that time.
I'll tell you, I mean, there's, you compare the two and you go back and forth, and there were some, even as a kid, I thought the Jaws ride was no good. But to me, when I was that age, 10, 11, 12 years old, nothing could top that Back to the Future ride that Disney did. That was just so amazingly cool being a Back to the Future fan. So,
yeah.
All right. Last message here we got. This is from John again. No, I'm just kidding. This is actually from Jimmy. We tried to go for 4 Johns. We got 3 Johns and a Jimmy. He really liked our Christmas show. He said it was exceptional. I'm sure I speak for others and say I appreciate We Are the Podcast the time you put into it. He sent us links to 2 videos here. Christmas in '94, which I'll share that link there. And he added a little interesting story here. They were actually down in Disney, and they set the VCR to tape the Christmas parade Christmas morning. So you know how precise you had to be if you didn't have VCR Plus. You had to really, first off, make sure your clock
There's a reference.
Yes.
Now you have to explain what VCR Plus was to people.
That's right. Oh my gosh.
There was 2 ways to program your VCR. The first one, which you had to get everything right. Most people's VCRs, if you recall, just flash 12 all the time because when the power went out, it was a big pain to set the time and change it back and forth. So you had to make sure your time was set right. Then you had to go into whatever the menu system was on that VCR and say, start recording at this time. You also had to make sure the TV was on the right channel. So if mom came in and switched the channel physically or digitally, it taped whatever channel was coming through. So you got screwed there. Now, VCR Plus added a little bit. I feel like I'm at Best Buy again trying to sell this thing. In the TV guide or the guide in your newspaper, there was a number code, and that number code you'd put into the VCR Plus interface, and that was it. I mean, I think it was just a channel and a time reference. If it wasn't that technical, but each show or time period had its own little code. I never owned VCR Plus. Did you guys?
No. None of the VCRs we had it. But I remember the TV listings for years had the code next to each show. And it was like a zip code, but most of the VCRs could only do a week. So once they moved from like their original analog cars, so my first VCR had dials on it, literally channel dials, for UHF and VHF. But when they got into like the mid 80s and there was more digital tuning, they would record for a week. So you could set Saturday, Sunday, Monday if you set it up right. But if you were going away for more than a week, like you could only set it up to like record every Wednesday or every Saturday at 9:00 if you wanted the Golden Girls. Like you couldn't set it up for like different things during the week.
I was gonna say, eventually I think we got a VCR with a tuner on it, so that way you could set the channel on the VCR instead of on the television. But I do remember the early ones, you got whatever was running through.
Right.
And I remember if you've watched any of the VHS stuff that I've recorded and we've digitized and put out, I would always set it to start recording at least 3 minutes early and 3-4 minutes after the time. So in case something got screwed up with the broadcast, you'd be likely to catch it. Because especially if it ran on if you were going out of town, or I was going to the park and something was going to come on CBS and there was a football game in front of it.
Yeah,
you'd be like,
Sundays, because it used to be football just used to be played on Sundays, and then the one Monday night football game. And football used to screw up Sunday night television all the time. They'd preempt it by 20, 30 minutes sometimes, depending on how long the game went. So
if it was really important, I'd set it to like long play so I could get 4 hours, and then I'd record a half hour before and then like 2 hours after in case it got delayed for time.
So what does all this have to do with Jimmy's letter?
Absolutely nothing.
Who's Jimmy? So Jimmy set the VCR. He got the channel. He did everything right to tape the Christmas morning Christmas parade. And they got home and they realized the local station was playing the church service instead of the parade. So Jimmy tried to do everything right. And this is the best part of the story. He says, just one sentence, we were disappointed. So they contacted their local ABC station and they didn't have a copy of it, but they could put him in touch with the Chicago station to purchase a video. I'm not sure it was legal then, but he bought the entire parade for $200 from the station.
Oh my God.
And he says we're welcome to a copy of it if we'd like. So,
and we are. Todd can do his AI magic with it.
That's right.
But I think we already answered him. But if we didn't yet, let's note to respond to him. That's incredible, though. $200
in 1994 money.
Yeah.
He did say the second video, some highlights from our trip. It includes opening presents in the Contemporary, Nancy Kerrigan skating at Hollywood Studios, Plumber Street Performer at MGM Studios, more parade video, and Christmas show at the Contemporary that you spoke of about during the podcast. And one more thing on VCR Plus.
Just let me sell you this, ma'am. JT was a Best Buy salesman, by the way.
No. I had a thing called the VCR Mouse. Have you heard of this? It was from the DirecTV, and it was an IR blaster. So you'd set your DirecTV and you'd be like, hey, I want to watch this show. So not just tuning to it, it also turn the VCR on and make it record whatever tape was in there. Now, you could have really screwed up a tape in there if you didn't set this right.
Yeah.
But that was another thing that he still would have got the Christmas service, though.
The infrared era was an interesting one.
Right.
Just think in a few years we'll be able to talk about TiVo.
Well, Todd and I still have them. So
we still, don't knock my TiVo.
We love our TiVos.
All right. Well, thanks, Jimmy. Thanks, Johns. We appreciate all the letters. If you would like to be on the show possibly, or have a question, comment, or anything to share, write us to podcast@retrowdw.com. There's a chance you could end up on the show. There's a chance we could answer your question, and we try to get to everything. So thanks for all the messages.
We might even sell you a VCR.
All right. All right, welcome everybody to our main topic. Boy, Cranium Command is where we're going in the Wonders of Life Pavilion. And what an amazing pavilion that was. But we have a very special episode here for you. And I love the fact that we're bringing in some guest stars here, right, Brian? So I'm going to let you do the Love Boat intro here. I think we should cue up the Love Boat theme, bring them in inside. We shouldn't put them in a heart on a ship's wheel. What could we do, Brian? What would maybe it's a DNA?
Those screens.
Yeah, we'd put one in each eye in Cranium Command, and so Brian, I'll let you do. I'm so happy to have them here, and looking forward to this episode.
All right. So normally when we do one of these episodes, one of us takes the lead on researching it and putting our thoughts in order. And as we've been making our way through the Wonders of Life Pavilion in recent months, when it got to the point where we were going to discuss Cranium Command and kind of fill out some of the edges of Wonders of Life, I had suggested to our team here that, we could go out there and do all of that. But we would just end up getting an email as soon as the episode was over from Bunny Wars and Dreamfinder Guy, the foremost experts on the internet about Wonders of Life, telling us everything we got wrong or missed or didn't do justice to. So I said, well, why don't we just have them on the show? And they graciously agreed. So we are thrilled tonight to have with us two folks, and we'll ask them about their interest in the pavilion. You can find Bunny on Twitter at Bunny_Wars, I think is the handle. And Dreamfinder Guy, how is your handle actually spelled out?
It's just at Dreamfinder and Guy. You smash the two together.
There you go. So we are thrilled to welcome Bunny and Dreamfinder Guy to the show. And let me ask, when did your obsession with this pavilion start?
Well, I guess I will lead on here. For me, it all began in 2016, which is crazy to me that it's been that long. But it was just, I was slowly beginning to get into Epcot stuff. I was speaking with my mom about old theme park attractions, and she started talking to me about like, oh, there was this old ride at Epcot Center called Horizons that I used to really love. And she was like, hey, we should see if there's like a video of it on YouTube or something. She had no idea it had a cult following. She thought she was some weirdo that just liked an old theme park ride. She now knows that there are several of those old weirdos who like that theme park ride, probably more than any other. That got me thinking. I was like, wow, this Horizons thing is really cool. I bet there was other cool stuff at Epcot. So I just kind of found Wonders of Life on my own. And it was very interesting because Horizons was obviously gone. There was no trace of it left in the park. But with Wonders of Life, it was like half still there. The structure was there. It was partially dismantled. And that like kind of scratched an itch in my head to where it's one, cool old themed entertainment. And two, there's something there for me to go and see and know like, hey, this used to be something else. So on my very first trip to Epcot, after that, I immediately went over to Wonders and just geeked out over, wow, this is really cool. And I just started to do a lot of research on it. And that pretty much led me to where I am today. I just kind of never stopped.
And Bunny?
For me, I am a fake Wonders fan. I have never been in the building. I'm just going to get that out of the way now. I have never even been in the building, but boy, I can tell you everything about it. I first got interested in Wonders of Life after the Buzzy theft happened, which again, oh, what a fake fan. You didn't know about it before that. My first trip to Epcot was about a week after Wonders closed in 2007. So I never got to experience it. I went on my honeymoon to Disney World, and on the ride back, I was on my phone and I was like, I think I remember reading about some old ride that was hidden. I was thinking about Food Rocks, which I also love. But I saw the thread on WDW Magic about Buzzy that was by Dreamfinder Guy, and I started reading about it. And I remember showing a picture of Buzzy to my husband and being like, look, this animatronic got stolen from Disney World. And we like laughed about it. And now it's been 4 years and he sees that animatronic like every day. God bless. Shout out to my husband for dealing with me. But as I started to research Wonders of Life, because I'm also one of those people that I fall into a rabbit hole, pun intended, and I just keep going and reading and reading and reading. I was really, really taken by the fact that Wonders was about enjoying what your body does for you to keep you alive and appreciating your life. And it wasn't just about, here's the nervous system, here's the skeletal system. MetLife really wanted to show that being alive is a very unique experience, and it's important to not take it for granted. I remember looking at the sign that says, the back of the Wonders marquee that says, "It's a wonderful life. Thanks for joining us." And that just really, really took me. And I felt like, oh, it was in a way talking to me like, thank you for joining us and being here to appreciate being alive. Thank you for being here to appreciate the wonders of life. So I just enjoy it from a mental health perspective, that it was so great. There was this monument to enjoying what your body does for you. And so that's why I'm here doing all this research on a thing that I never experienced.
And before anybody gets the idea that these are just two fans who've read anything that would be out there for anyone to read, they have made a scholarly pursuit of this, tracking down people from Metropolitan Life, tracking down people from Disney, tracking down people from third parties who contracted with Disney on this attraction in its first incarnation, which we're going to have them talk about first, and then in its final incarnation. And they have amassed more documents. In fact, Dreamfinder guy ended up getting a boatload of documents from the MetLife archives related to the attraction. And these guys have just, they've done an amazing job.
I feel that we have to make up for the fact that we didn't get to experience it by absorbing as much information as we possibly can about it. I've spoken personally to over 35 people that have worked on Cranium Command. I've spoken to voice actors. I've spoken to animatronic animators, electrical engineers, show designers, concept artists, everything. I want to talk to everyone about it. I don't care what they did. If they had a part of it, I want to let them know that I love it and that it was important.
So their props here are properly given, right? We've established that, and I should say that the constant, you shouldn't always feel the need to tell people, hey, I didn't get to ride this. I mean, it's an important perspective, but people who write books about Abraham Lincoln and John Adams never met them and didn't live when they were presidents. So most historical things are written in the past tense by people who didn't actually experience the events, at least large parts of it in history. So there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you've done more than people who lived through the attraction have done to chronicle its history and to get the stories put down. So let's talk about Cranium Command first. I want to talk about the version prior to our friend Buzzy. So the first attempt at Cranium Command as an attraction. Introduce us to Cranium Command as an attraction.
You guys have spoken about before, the Life and Health Pavilion was supposed to be an opening day pavilion. It was there from the start. Cranium Command began as the head trip, and it was intended to have the three animatronics that were reason, intellect, and the nervous system, I believe. Okay. That eventually both Body Wars and Cranium Command got a big dose of, oh, what's popular right now? Star Trek. Let's put Star Trek on everything. So they changed it into, we would have these three teams of animatronics, and they would be controlling, looking out the eyes. The concept of you being inside of a head and you looking out the eyes has been the same through all incarnations of Cranium Command. There's always been an animatronic of sorts. It went from having three animatronics to going and having several teams of animatronics, and kind of like the Incredible Journey Within, they had to be like, well, this is way too ambitious. We have to cut this down. And they eventually got down to having one animatronic who changed several times. I believe his name has always been Captain Cortex since the beginning until he became Buzzy in 1989. So
yes. So that leads us into Colossal Pictures as Cranium Command, which was basically a marketing firm, a studio that did a lot of stuff like old MTV bumpers, and they were contracted by Disney because the whole show was outsourced to basically just have almost complete creative control. Disney gave them a set of notes that this is what we want, this is what MetLife requires.
And a script.
Yes, you do it. We're going to go focus on finishing up Body Wars and the rest of this. just make sure you have it done by 89. We want to have this finished and open in the pavilion. That was set up in the style of like a 50s educational cartoon. Everything was completely animated, and the eyes were not on constantly. It was more of a thing to where it was like, oh, let's watch this scenario and let's hear how the body parts respond to it. And Captain Cortex would be there to be the narrator of the experience and just like the person who's piloting the brain, who makes all these decisions. And did he make the right decision? Did he make the wrong decision? And it got to a point where they were just about done with this version of the attraction. They had done voice tests. They had done pencil tests. They were just about to send it to ink and paint. They sent their nearly final polished product over to Disney, and Disney's reaction was not great. We have spoken to the director of the Colossal Pictures project, and he was told that Disney's reaction was, hey, this is great stuff. We just like to finish it ourselves. We want to like add our own sprinkle in here. Great work, you guys. We're going to give you a lot of money as a kill fee since we're not finishing with your work. Thank you for everything you've done. Well, we're going to go do it ourselves now. But on Disney's end, it was more of a like, oh my God, we can't show this in a theme park. People already think Epcot Center is boring. They're going to look at this and think, oh dear, this is just a bad educational short that they're passing off as a theme park attraction. We have to fix this really fast.
They used expletives to describe it.
Yes, specifically Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was not a fan of it and immediately wanted it changed. So
that much that they actually used it. That's just as crazy that like this is. They didn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah. That was, and Jerry Reese has told that story a bunch of times that basically Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg came to him and said, this thing's a mess. Can you go take a look at it and fix it?
And I've spoken to animators who worked on Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. I've spoken to Jerry Reese, the director, and I've all asked them, did you guys know it was bad while you were working on it? And the director, George Evelyn, who's a wonderful guy, love him. He was like, oh no, I thought it was great. But the animators were like, yeah, we all kind of knew, but we were getting paid for it. So apparently they couldn't all decide on like one art style to go with. Some of them wanted like a super flat style. Some of them wanted the Disney style, and they couldn't agree with it. And one of the animators, Steve Moore, described it as being a mismatch, just a mishmash. It was awful. The demo audio is available. It is very difficult to listen to. It is just bad.
Nobody ever had a thought that came to them from out of the blue. It came to them because of the work that goes on in their Cranium Command.
Captain Cortex is not a likable character at all, which is one of the big things that they had to change, which is how we ended up getting Buzzy. He was just a cocky, rude know-it-all, and the lesson from it was just so pretentious, and it talked down to you and just sounded like this is your day as you go through and encounter stress. Like, not exciting. I believe Jerry Reese specifically said not exciting. That was the main thing he went for with the newer version.
The next time someone asks you who's the brains in this outfit, you can say, why, it's my Captain Cortex.
We are the Cranium Command, using our heads the best we can. If an answer's what we need, we know how to succeed. We'll solve any problem on demand. Yes, we are the Cranium.
With Colossal Pictures as Cranium Command, usually our first instinct is to, when someone's worked on this, we need to go contact them. But with Colossal Pictures, they went out of business in 1999. So there's not a company line to contact because there's no company. So when we spoke to George Evelyn, he said that when the company closed up shop, their archives got trashed. He only knew of one person that we're trying to contact who might have anything other than himself. Which
Heather Selleck, if you're listening, answer your email. I'm trying to email you.
And the legacy of that version of the show is kind of crazy to think about just with the way that we have dug into it, because it was pretty much killed, it was abandoned, it was meant to be forgotten about because it never made it into the park, except it did in several ways, because they did not kill the original version of the show until May of 1989, which was when they started doing it in-house. So the pavilion opened that October. So show install had already begun. If you look online, sometimes you'll see a picture of Buzzy and he'll be wearing like a red jacket and a blue hat. That was all from the original version. That was his original character design. They had to finish this so fast on a limited budget that they just redressed the original animatronic to look like Buzzy, because he was originally a completely different character. That's why the animatronic looks different than how Buzzy does in the pre-show. And stuff was already designed with this version of the attraction in mind. The original show marquee had to be redressed with pictures of the actors who played the final version, because set pieces were already fabricated. They were going all in on this version of the show. And then suddenly they had to pull the emergency brake and basically start over.
I believe they had, what was it, 6 weeks to do the pre-show from start to finish, which the pre-show is so special and important in its own right. And just to think that we were that close to not getting the Beauty and the Beast that we know today, because it was directed by Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale, who were just, we need someone to do the pre-show. Here, you two animators, go! Who had no directing experience. So they did such a good job. They went on to do Beauty and the Beast. Had Cranium Command not been axed at the last minute like that and changed, we wouldn't have Beauty and the Beast. We wouldn't have Atlantis. We wouldn't have Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, it's such an important keystone there that people don't seem to realize.
And I think Jerry's story is that he had done so much work in Disney MGM Studios, and they came over to him the day that opened, May 1st, 1989, and said, good, now that you're done here, we have this mess over here you need to fix.
And we've asked several people, what do you think led to this being bad? And the biggest answer that we have gotten is that there were just too many cooks in the kitchen. There was MetLife wanted to get in on it. Disney wanted to get in on it. Colossal Pictures had to have their say on what they were doing. So at that point, it was just the script was getting pulled between 3 companies, 3 huge corporations, and it's bad.
Yeah.
It's really bad.
So that's the story of the attraction we didn't see. Let's talk about the one that we did see. And it does start, well, first, there are varying marquees and things like that we've talked about, because it went through different changes to draw people to the back of the pavilion where it was located and get them into the ride. Because one of the things about the design of Wonders of Life is the attraction spots were a little counterintuitive compared to the other pavilions, that they were kind of tucked away. And there wasn't giant flashing things like there were in some of the other pavilions, like come this way, come this way, come this way. It was a pavilion that promoted discovery. And you had to kind of wander around. And when you walked in the front door, we talked about that in our prior episode, it was not immediately evident where everything was. There was a map there for you. So you enter this attraction, and there's a couple of figurines of or artist renderings of General Knowledge pointing you the way to go and asking you to enroll in his army. Tell us about we're walking into the pavilion and we're approaching the pre-show. Tell us a little bit about that walk.
So going into Wonders of Life, there's of course that main entrance ramp. And once you take that ramp down into the building, there's of course the Goofy About Health stage on the left and the Anatomical Players stage on the right. And if you took that right and started walking by the Anatomical Players, you would pass by the Pure and Simple snack bar and the little sensory hands-on area with the touch and feel exhibits. And right in the middle of those sensory exhibits in the Sensory Funhouse lied the entrance to Cranium Command. And that was kind of a detriment to it to begin with, because it's just kind of shoved in the middle of these other exhibit things. So if you're walking through the exhibit things, you might just figure, oh, this is another one of those things where I stick my hand in a hole and try to feel if this is a baseball or something. Oh, we can skip this. We've seen enough here. We can just walk on by. They realized at that point they needed to make it more obvious that it was a show to get people to see.
After this whole thing where they had to redo it at the last minute and go through hell to get it going, just no one's going to it.
So they started trying to make it more obvious that this was a show back here. They began with, in the mid-90s, they would put out billboards in front of the building saying, hey, come inside and see Cranium Command. It's a show. It's worth watching. Here's what it is. Come this way. Walk up this ramp. And they would put A-frames everywhere in Wonders saying, Cranium Command is this way. Look at the arrow. There's a thing over here. Come see it.
See, they hadn't discovered hula hoops and bubble blowers yet. That's the thing.
What were those other, the bazonka balls or whatever they were? Remember those?
Balzac.
The Balzac.
That's it. Balzac, yes. Oh my gosh.
And the culmination of them trying to get people to realize this is a show, come watch it, came in the mid to late 90s when the main marquee finally got a refresh. That dying vestige of the original show that looked like a human body with all the different body parts in it and with the Cranium Command lettering at the top, they decided to remove all of that stuff and make it look like a theater marquee. It's a theater show. Come into the thing that looks like a theater marquee. It says it's a special engagement. Come see it. Here's General Knowledge and Buzzy, the people you'll see. It's a theater show. We want to make that very clear. It's not another sensory exhibit. It's a theater show. So
hold on. Is it a theater show or a sensory exhibit? I'm still confused.
I think it might be one of those sensory exhibits, but I feel like in order to find out for sure, we have to walk past the marquee.
Well, you know what's funny about this, DFG, is it's very similar to what you had in the land for Kitchen Cabaret. I know you may have not seen that, but Kitchen Cabaret was down where Soren is now. It was tucked away. There was a marquee inside, but you really didn't know because you had to go through this like fake little street thing to get there.
But if you remember, they brought that marquee on the ramp.
Yeah.
It started on the ground floor and the stencil on the wall went all the way up to the second floor to kind of draw your attention to it.
Come down here. And so they still need to get people down there. But I just find it's interesting how when you have a sub attraction, because Body Wars was the place to go, right? You need a way. I mean, let's be fair. This is a B, you could argue C attraction, C ticket, right? And you got to get people in there because you want crowds to go away. You want to reduce the friction elsewhere in the pavilion. Bunny, you got something?
Okay. DFG mentioned the Cranium Command marquee with the Cranium Command logo. I just wanted to say, when we interviewed the director of Colossal Pictures, Cranium Command, I asked him, did you ever get to go see Cranium Command yourself? And he said, yeah, the first thing I noticed when I walked in is that they used my logo. And he said, I just doodled that like on a piece of paper. I didn't think they would go and use that for the big marquee. It's in like a Mickey Mouse font that I've seen used before, but that's a holdover from Colossal Pictures Cranium Command, which there are a lot of, and we will get into that at some point, but lots of it remains about.
More than we even mentioned before. There are vestiges in the main show.
Oh yeah.
It reminds me, I don't know how I might be able to say this art style. So like back to, I don't know why I keep going to Nickelodeon today, but if you remember, you can't do that on television. It was like this style of like that animation.
Exploding words. Yeah.
Well, that, and then it had like almost like pastel-y looking people like moving. They were like photographs that almost looked like paper dolls moving along. And that's what this kind of reminds me of.
It's so funny you mentioned that before, how answers, because when I watch it, I'm like, that looks like Monty Python. And
yeah, there you go. That's it too.
Yeah.
And then even the picture out front of the kid's head with the 4 colors on it, like outside, that's the same style. And that almost was like a 80s into the 90s type thing or something. But it's weird that reminds me of that the original entryway there to Cranium Command.
I can like sense the mutual anticipation between us to just like talk about the tiny things in the pre-show and like.
Oh, I'm dying. This is my favorite thing in the world to talk about.
I love that we've already mentioned the Monty Python-esque animation, because that was, and we will talk about it when we get there, but those animations were made by someone who worked on both the original and the final main show of the attraction. So that was one little holdover. There was one member of the crew who worked on the original and worked on the final.
Steve Moore.
I was going to say that style kind of permeated the 80s and 90s, even on MTV with videos where they would shoot. It was an inexpensive. I mean, really what it comes down to it was an inexpensive way at times to be able to shoot film. If you didn't have the budget to shoot film, you could shoot stills at 12 frames a second or 10 frames a second and put them on an animation stand and film that. And if you wanted to paint on top of them, either in like a Quantel light box, or you could physically paint with watercolors or something and reshoot it. Like it was a style, you know, even before Take On Me, there were tons and tons of videos during the 1980s where you'd have that pastel painted over look. I'm sure technology probably enabled that to happen easier and cheaper at some point. But I mean, talk about Colossal Pictures, that would have been definitely in their wheelhouse of animation styles that they would have used on, you know, either MTV promos or commercials that they worked on.
They did a lot of stuff.
Yes,
they did a whole lot of stuff, and great stuff too.
Speaking of artwork, DFG, didn't you come across some original artwork of the original characters in an odd way?
Yes, I actually was meaning to mention this earlier, but with our work on trying to find out about Colossal Pictures' Cranium Command, usually in these cases, unless it's Disney, because Disney never wants to share their stuff, we try to go to people and go to corporate archives. So with Colossal Pictures, they closed up shop in 1999, so they don't have a company to contact, there's no archives. We talked to George Evelyn, who said that all of that got junked when the company shut down. So that was kind of a dead lead there. But we, of course, want to still find as much original content as we can. So while the original pencil tests may be missing, we still have key art of the characters, which came about in a rather strange way. Because this kill switch on the original attraction came so late in the development, production materials for the attraction were already gotten by MetLife and hung up in their corporate lounge. So as decor in their lounge, they had this framed image of the 4 body parts that were in the original Cranium Command. And it would make sense as a, hey, these are the guys from the attraction down there, if that were to come about. But they just left them there as a confusing artifact throughout the entirety of the MetLife VIP facilities operation. So I would have to imagine it would have been a funny story, somebody walking in there like, what are these? What's the story behind it? But Director of External Relations Jim McCaskill was MetLife's contact for Epcot Center from '89 to 2001 when MetLife dropped out. And when MetLife dropped their sponsorship, they had corporate property in there, including these original pieces of artwork. And MetLife basically said, yeah, we don't want these. So you're technically a MetLife employee. If you want any of this, it's yours. Go ahead and take it home. So he did, and that artwork is now the property of his stepson, who posted about it, and we talked to them about it and got the entire story behind it. So he may own the last of the production materials of the original Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. And it's a very cool artifact because it's basically all we have to imagine what the final show could have been like. Of course, the search continues. Hopefully we'll find more someday, but it's not looking very likely.
We find a lot of strange things that way just from people posting them on social media and being like, hey, look at this. Like, I'm in contact with a show, was he an electrical engineer?
Yes.
He has the crate that Buzzy was shipped to Epcot in. It's from when he was Captain Cortex. So it says Captain Cortex, 1 head, 6 valves, something like that. And he showed us a picture of the barcode that you would scan that was like Captain Cortex animatronic. And he was like, this is Buzzy's birth certificate. But just, could you ever imagine finding something like that? No.
Or somebody keeping it. Yeah. Like,
yes, he made a tool shelf out of it. He also had the box that the Body War simulators were sent to Epcot in, but still just like,
that's a pretty big box.
I think in fairness, it was only like a handful of actuators that they used with it, or like half the assembly or something. But on the box shipping label, it said like simulator assembly, such and such parts.
Life
That's
Pavilion.
so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so our research is like going on Facebook and looking up every single word we could possibly think of that would be related to Wonders of Life, and then going on the Internet Archive, going through Google search, and then looking up by color, looking up by year, looking up by day, until we find something interesting. And what I love about Cranium Command is it's like a puzzle piece that gets mailed to me once a month of a bigger puzzle. Like, oh my God, guess what we found? We found footage of the Captain Cortex animatronic being tested in 1987. It's only 1 second of footage, but that's enough to keep me going for another month until I find something else.
I'll have
up
Todd.
at 3 a.m. desperately Googling Epocot, MetLife Pavilion, insurance ride, something like that. Just any term or any misspelling that could possibly dig up something new.
Something I love is that every person who I've spoken to about Cranium Command has had a positive recollection of it. Anyone who worked on it only has good things to say about it. It either was a big turning point in their career, or they had a lot of fun doing it, or they remember it fondly. Just everyone's always excited to talk about Cranium Command. That makes me so happy.
So past the marquee, which they finally changed to make it obvious that, okay, what does anybody remember what it is?
I'm not sure. Wasn't it a sensory exhibit?
Something like that. You would walk into this small hallway that would have wall carpet, brightly colored, and the main sign that said the recruitment center is this way, general knowledge wants you. And you would walk past all these little Q signs and a LED sign that would list the countdown ticking down for when the next show was.
And they had brain teasers.
Yes. And so there would be this small little...
after the first year, when there was nothing to look at except for the carpeted walls.
Yes,
I'm sure that was because they were like, quick, get all this stuff out of here. This isn't the version we're doing anymore.
And so you would walk from small hallway to a little holding area. And what was interesting is that it was an open air entrance and exit were together. There was just a little, like maybe 2-3 foot wall that separated the two. So you could walk over and see people exiting the show from waiting in line, because there weren't separate queues and exit hallways quite like a modern attraction would be. It was basically one room with a small divider. And when the attraction finally closed, that small divider was removed to make that a big space for them to use for festival stuff or whatever purposes they needed. But that's into the far future now. So past that holding area where you would see fun signs, like there was a purple brain, which has some interesting connotations to it. How do you get like super terribly injured while commanding someone? That's fun stuff to think about while you're at Disney World. But you would sit in that holding area until you were finally let into the pre-show.
Someday I will get to see it in HD. Disney, let me have the HD Cranium Command pre-show. I know you have it. Golly, I love the Cranium Command pre-show. As I said, it is a very important piece of Disney history, and I don't feel that it is recognized as such. The pre-show was done by Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale directed it. They brought in as I mentioned before, there was the issue with audiences just didn't like Captain Cortex. He was just rude. He was just smarmy and cocky. So they brought in Dave Prixma, who you may know as animating and designing Mrs. Potts and Chip, the gargoyles in Hunchback of Notre Dame, Flounder, Flick from Pocahontas. He was known as the King of Cute. So they brought him in to change Captain Cortex into who was temporarily Sparky and then Buzzy. But they kept the Captain Cortex design up until like the last minute when they changed it to be more of a military theme. He said his inspirations for Buzzy were Radar from MASH, which is obvious. Ranger Woodlore from the Humphrey the Bear cartoons. Ranger Woodlore and Buzzy are very similar in their mannerisms. Both of them do a lot of very gentle, sweet hand things. But he said that he wanted him to be an average Joe. He could be anyone that was there watching the pre-show who, comes in late to their first day of class. He just wanted him to be relatable and someone that the audiences would feel empathy towards and want to root for, instead of this smarmy guy who was just making fun of the hypothalamus and calling him a hypopotamus and all the stupid jokes that go on in Colossal Pictures Cranium.
I think they were very successful in that because Buzzy is relatable. You as you begin to learn who he is, you kind of feel sorry for him, but you cheer him on, and you want him to succeed, and you see your own self in a lot of, not only the boy we're going to talk about, but he well, in the pre-show you're going to talk about, he gets a little bullied, and you want him to win.
While we're on the topic of character changes between the Colossal Pictures version and the final version, one of my very favorite anecdotes while researching the switchover is when we were speaking with George Evelyn. He said that in their version, General Knowledge was more of a kindly uncle character, that just like the supportive, I'm proud of you, sport, but you can do better and stuff like that, just the gentle, encouraging person. And then when Disney switched it over, they made him more of a stereotypical Hollywood drill sergeant character. And George Evelyn told us that when he finally went out to go see the show, that was the one change that he was most disappointed with, because he felt like they put a lot of love into General Knowledge's character, and he didn't like how Disney took him and made him the stereotypical yelling, angry drill sergeant.
He was deeply offended.
Yes, he was incredibly upset by that. That was the one switchover change that he was most saddened about. And honestly, I can imagine he was probably very proud of the work that went into it, but I can't imagine General Knowledge as anything but that drill sergeant character.
All right, you pitiful submitted sad sacks, eyes front and listen up. I'm your commanding officer, General Knowledge, and it's my job to turn you mealy-mouthed meatheads into a crack squadron of Cranium Commandos.
George Evelyn himself was in the military, and that is why he took it so personally, because he said that he was like, he really went off about it. It was like, drill sergeants don't act like that. They just want the best for you. He said General Knowledge was supposed to be a kindly uncle to Captain Cortex and not this screaming drill sergeant. But, oh man, he talked about that more than anything else.
Yeah, I don't remember at what point we talked about it, but I think we sort of pointed towards like Full Metal Jacket being that coming out and being a popular film. And that sort of, I think, launched the idea of like the angry drill sergeant as a character.
And that Lee Emery character, that performance just became the iconic image of the training recruits anywhere.
Right. I mean, so much so they used him for Toy Story.
Yeah.
When they needed a drill sergeant
just
for
his
that.
voice is so iconic now associated with that. That's
he was originally based on George Patton. His intro was all inspired by Patton, but it was just supposed to be more regal and more of a distinguished military man instead of, yes, he described the intro of General Knowledge for us, but General Knowledge was one of the small holdovers from it. They said it's got to be about stress management, and there's got to be a guy named General Knowledge, basically.
And that was straight from MetLife. That was their demands. It's like, Disney, we have trust in you. This is what you need to keep.
There's a lot of mystery as to why Buzzy sounds completely different in the pre-show and the actual show itself. And that is because he is voiced by two different people. In the main show, he is voiced by Scott Curtis, who also plays Bobby, the 12-year-old boy. In the pre-show, he's voiced by Jared Rushton, who I believe during the time Cranium Command was being produced, he was in Big. He was filming Big, and he's the friend in that movie.
Billy Kopecki.
And so he was not as readily available as Scott Curtis was. And Scott Curtis told us that he initially went in and knew that he was going to be playing Bobby, but as time went on and they realized they didn't have enough time to dub everything with Jared Rushton, they were like, just voice the animatronic too. It's like you're speaking with his voice. So Buzzy goes from sounding like an adult in the pre-show to sounding like a 12-year-old in the show. And it's just one of those mysteries. When I spoke to Dave Prixma, he was like, yeah, they didn't even really look at my design when they made that animatronic. They were just like slapping clothes on it as fast as they could. So I always find it strange that the animatronic that was stolen or misplaced or whatever you believe happened is not even Buzzy. It's Captain Cortex that was redressed with Buzzy's stuff.
You know, and it's funny, for all the years, I never felt like there was a disconnect. It's like the bomber jacket and the glasses and the hat was enough for me to go like, yeah, that's him. But when you really look at the character, they are so vastly different.
At first I thought of it like, oh, we're seeing him in 3D, so he has like a 3D, but like it's so so strange.
And on the topic of the Buzzy animatronic, just to trail off a little bit here, something that's very special about him is just how he was composited. There was the fact that he was on a boom and could like rush above the stage was a big deal, because that was not something that Disney had ever attempted before, or that had ever really been done. So he was this highly advanced figure that was not bolted to the floor. He was bolted to a boom and could be moved around to look out each screen. And he also was the first Disney animatronic to use hydraulics and pneumatics. His hydraulic functions were his arms and his hands and stuff like that. And then his eyelids and stuff would be pneumatic, to where he would open and shut his eyelids, his eyebrows, that would all be air. And all these lines would travel along the boom and then back to the back of the stage. And it was because of a lot of these complexities that the animatronic faced some maintenance issues. We spoke to Jerry Rees about it too, where a few years after it opened, Buzzy would be facing sync issues, and Jerry Rees had to send over his documentation from programming about like, hey, this is what you need to do to fix all of this.
That was 1992. He said he got very gummy, which is like,
Yes.
that's not very long after it opened. He said that the animatronic just started missing its mark on everything and just moving very slowly. Jerry Rees said Buzzy was the most difficult animatronic he had ever worked with, that he was just, the animatronic is just cursed. He didn't function 100% correctly even before being installed into the show. In test footage, you can see like one of his eyes is way slower than the other one, and it was like that when the show opened. Doug Griffith and Dave Fighton programmed the Buzzy animatronic, and Jerry Rees told us that he didn't want to respond to commands. It didn't want to move properly. He said that at one point, the animatronic, just a burst of hydraulic fluid came out the back of him and Buzzy slumped over like he was dead. And if you look at pictures of the animatronic after it was abandoned, you'll see where he continued to have these like hydraulic problems. Even afterwards, it would start like, I can date pictures of the animatronic based on like how much hydraulic fluid has stained the screen underneath him, because it got worse and worse with time. But we have a lot of accounts from CMs where they said that Cranium Command would 101 because Buzzy would just spray hydraulic fluid all over the audience. Like, I have had multiple people tell me about that it was like there was a splash zone in the first couple rows and they would have to go shut Cranium Command down for the day because Buzzy would just...
It just reminds me of Dan Aykroyd as what's her name in Saturday
Julia
Night
Child.
Live. Julia Child, when he cuts himself,
Cut along the backbone to the Pope's nose like so. Oh! Now I've done it. I've cut the dickens out of my finger. Well, I'm glad in a way this happened. You know, accidents do occur from time to time in the kitchen. We've never really discussed what to do.
That is, I don't know if it's an apocryphal story or not. I don't think it is, because it's in, I don't know, one of Marty Sklar's books or one of them. When they did Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln originally, the hydraulic fluid was red and it sprung a leak during one of the shows and it looked like Lincoln had been shot. And Walt was like, change the color of the fluid so that doesn't happen again.
After the theft, if you look at pictures from after Buzzy was removed, there's like hydraulic fluid spray all over the stage. It's very sad.
And that's another thing that was kind of crazy, is his lines were pressurized. So
yeah, he was still,
when he
like,
was
there.
cut down, that pressure let out onto the stage. And they were as late as 2018, I believe, which was the year that he went missing. They were still doing testing in there, which there's a common misconception that they were testing because, oh, they're going to bring back Cranium Command for a limited time run for this special event or whatever. The intention behind the testing was doubling as testing Buzzy to make sure he still works, so that when he gets taken to the archives, they'll know he's in working order.
Which he did. He still worked. He synced with his audio and everything. He was fine.
The main thing that they did when they were in their testing was just making sure the lines themselves still worked, so that if they were ever to reuse that theater, redress it for a different show, for a New Wonders expansion, that the lines could still be recycled and they wouldn't have to redo all that show installation. They could just use the hardware that was there. And that, of course, never came to be. They removed all of that show hardware, gutted the building. But the main thing that was behind that testing was just making sure that those lines themselves were still reliable.
So the pre-show, you see that there are all these little tiny people who pilot brains. The brains are represented by actual photocopies of the people that worked on the attraction and their kids.
Oh.
And that was a holdover from Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. They also had the photocopied heads in that version as well. But they replaced them with the people who worked on this version of the attraction when it came out. So everyone's talking about, oh, we heard that there's going to be a new commander. Oh, he's probably a pushover. It's not a big deal. But then General Knowledge comes in with his tank that tears through the wall, and he comes out all full metal jacket, screaming at the top of his lungs, and giving everyone a lesson on what the brain is and how it works. They have the brain is so advanced. We have had some successes, and it shows Albert Einstein, and then we've had some failures, and you see Ernest, who was originally supposed to be Richard Nixon. It was
that
either
line,
going...
though, never fails to get the audience. It never fails to get the audience at all.
When I rewatched today,
yeah,
which was cold I hadn't seen watch the attraction in years. And when I rewatched it today, I laughed when Vern Troyer popped up. I'm like, oh, look at that.
It was either going to be Richard Nixon or the Three Stooges. And the Three Stooges estate was like, oh, absolutely not. But Richard Nixon's estate was like, okay, so it's just funny that of those two, that was the one, but they decided not to be controversial and have Ernest instead. As General Knowledge is giving his whole booming lecture about how the brain works, he gets interrupted by a little teeny tiny recruit who stumbles in very politely but very loudly and makes his way over into his seat. And of course, this draws a lot of attention. General Knowledge points him out, makes him get on the stage, and we are introduced to Buzzy, who is going to be the hero of the ride. He is the person who we see getting his baptism by fire. He shows up late and...
What's your name, recruit?
Buzzy, sir.
You think you're ready to pilot a brain, Fuzzy?
That's Buzzy, sir. Oh, yes, you just let me in my control panel.
Do you know that the brain can process up to 3 million bytes of information per second?
Why, you see,
I don't think you've got the spoiled a dim bulb, freaky. I don't think you understand the amount of concentration and commitment it takes to run this lovely unit.
He describes how the Cranium Commandos work from a seat that is located inside your cortex, and then they run how these people go about their day. And then we see the very scary cutout heads that gave people nightmares.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about this. While I'm sleeping, is my head going in a counterclockwise direction, coming off, going back to the location? Yeah, and then, right, exactly, just shipped off, comes back at night with a new guy in there, prepped and ready for the new day. I don't know, I'm a little concerned about my sleep now.
For those who are familiar with it, anytime you're watching Cranium Command, the pre-show or the main show, and you see something that is a pencil sketch, that is from Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. They did reuse a lot of their pencil sketches in terms of the lungs as bellows, and when it shows the brain opening up and you see the schematics of the brain. That's all from Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. It's the same in the show portion as well. You'll see there's a fish tank with some fish in it in the very beginning when Bobby is dreaming. That's also from Colossal Pictures Cranium Command. So George Evelyn was thrilled that some little bits of it ended up in there, and he loved it very much as well. But he told us he was happy he worked on the controversial version. So everyone gets their assignments, and we see that Buzzy is the last one who hasn't gotten his assignment. He politely reminds General Knowledge that he's still there. General Knowledge looks at his list and says,
well, some genius at HQ has picked you to pilot the most unstable craft in the fleet.
You don't mean...
You guessed it, Stinky. An adolescent boy. This particular model is 12 years old. Very
Buzzy, and I feel this is part of what makes him so endearing and lovable, is that he's just like, all right, I'll do it. Put me in the brain. I don't care. Here I go. And he just has this enthusiasm that feels very infectious as he stumbles and jumps into the brain and falls down through it. And then he tries to, wink and give a thumbs up to the girl next to him, who just ignores him completely and just sets him up for, oh, golly, what is going to happen here?
And there are some great visual gags in that scene too, that they're just like blink and you'll miss it, as to when they're loading the 12-year-old boy's head with stuff that a 12-year-old boy would like.
I was trying to catch that. I saw Coca-Cola and some candy bars, and what else was going on?
A couple Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition magazines.
and there's like Ariel. That was the first screen appearance of Ariel. And then there was like an X-Wing and C-3PO and just a bunch of blink and you'll miss it stuff.
Yeah, it all pours in there very quickly, but I was like, I saw some of that stuff.
So then they, general knowledge turns towards the audience and breaks the third wall and says,
Hey, you gold freaks, this ain't a spectator sport. Where do you think you are, Disney World? Get your strollers in line and hustle on the double. Move it, move it, move it.
I love that third wall breaking with the where do you think you are, Disney World. It's the implications of that are crazy too. But then you exit the pre-show area and you go into the theater, where it looks like you are looking out two big eyeballs, and there's a screen at the top and then 4 little screens at the bottom that are monitors, and you see Buzzy in between the eyes, who is now an animatronic that may or may not look like he did in the pre-show. You just use your imagination. He's 3D now. He has hair. He looks a little different, and is voiced completely differently as well, but you still know it's him.
Before we completely trail off of the pre-show, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the irony of the get your strollers in line and hustle line, because strollers were not permitted in Wonders of Life. In the original operating run, they didn't care after it went seasonal. There was designated stroller parking outside. We have old training information that says, if you are working Wonders of Life greeter, you are not to allow a stroller into the building. So it's there are no strollers here to move into the main show.
Who do you know who did the music for the pre-show and for Cranium Command? Because that is exceptionally well done too.
David Newman.
It's David Newman.
They did such a good job of that, and especially the way that they let it run through the transition as you're walking into the theater. That drum, music. That march keeps going. Really, it keeps your mood elevated and up, as you make that transition from the pre-show to the show, and you're like, oh yeah, this is awesome. This is you feel the energy. I think it's palpable it was palpable of I'm still in it. It's there's no, even though there could be downtime, sometimes it would take a couple of minutes for everybody to get set up. It's still that music carried you through and kept you anticipating the show starting.
So after the show doors close on the exit hall and the pre-show both, then you would see these illuminated light bars that provided the theater with its main lighting besides its top show lighting, and a cast member would come in from the pre-show side and on occasion would say something to the effect of, take it away, Buzzy, or would just be oh yeah, it's time to start the show, enjoy Cranium Command. You would listen to the no eating, drinking, or smoking announcements.
And no videotaping. I see on every videotape I have of the thing, it says no videotaping.
God bless those brave souls.
Yes, those rule breakers who graciously allowed us this preservation.
Sticking it to the man.
And then the show lights would dim, and then it would be complete darkness. And Buzzy would lead on with his iconic,
Gee, it sure is dark in here. There's gotta be a light around here somewhere. Oh, this ought to do it. Whoa!
All right, Pinhead, listen up.
General knowledge appears on the top screen and tells Buzzy about what we are about to see. That Buzzy is going to get through a day being a 12-year-old boy who has to make some very hard decisions throughout the day. And he threatens Buzzy by telling him that if he messes it up, he will have to pilot a chicken instead, which everyone is horrified at the thought. It never really goes into more about piloting the chicken, but every Cranium Commando is terrified of this. So General Knowledge threatens Buzzy and disappears. We see General Knowledge appear a couple times to yell at Buzzy throughout the show, but Buzzy readies himself. He starts looking at his controls there. He's sitting in a seat that has a whole bunch of levers all over it, lots of buttons. There's a spotlight shining onto the animatronic. But he is immediately greeted by a small robot-like character that appears from the bottom and introduces himself as the hypothalamus.
Okay, crew, report in. Left brain, right brain. Come in, please.
Yes, Captain. Did you call?
No. I guess I just pressed the wrong button.
It figures. No one ever wants to talk to me.
Who are you anyway?
I'm only the hypothalamus. I only monitor all the automatic functions of the body. All the things you don't need to worry about. I'm used to being taken for granted. Blink, blink, breathe, breathe. Day in, day out. Never a thank you, never a job well done.
Gee, I'm sorry. I had no idea.
A very fun character. He's voiced by Kirk Wise, the director of the pre-show, who was not supposed to voice hypothalamus, and they just threw it in, and at the last second they brought everyone in to listen, and then Jerry Reese was like, hey, oh, you like that voice? Well, guess who that is? The person who wasn't supposed to be the hypothalamus. And I think it was Michael Eisner was like, you bastard, or something like that.
I think it was Katzenberg. I don't think he was with Eisner at that screening. But it was a big deal that because he worked on the show itself, behind the scenes, he wasn't supposed to have a lead role.
Hypothalamus lets us know what he does. He controls all the automatic functions of the brain. Blink, blink, breathe, breathe. Never a thank you, never a job well done. Buzzy's very apologetic. This is in direct contrast to the Colossal Pictures Cranium Command version, where Captain Cortex just makes fun of him the whole time and calls him a hippopotamus. The hypothalamus has a very droning, monotone voice, and he's kind of there as the comic relief, just coming up to talk to Buzzy every once in a while throughout the show. But Buzzy gets introduced to all the different parts of the body, which are played by a bunch of celebrities that were very popular at the time, but like most things in Wonders of Life, it quickly became very dated.
We're not quite there yet.
Oh, continue then. Go ahead.
So from the beginning, hypothalamus is called by Buzzy, and they have their introductory meeting. The hypothalamus lets Buzzy know that Bobby is asleep. He is in the dream sequence.
He's like, you should have had this in class, Buzzy. How do you not know about this? Just more of the like making Buzzy appear so little and pathetic throughout it, to build up to him doing a great job.
And unprepared. Yeah.
Yes.
And then Buzzy, of course, decides, all right, it's time to get started. Let's wake him up. And he did that a little too late because suddenly Bobby, his eyes are open. His mom is right in front of him.
Whoa, what's going on? What's happening? Whoa, oh, the alarm clock. Eyes, find the clock. Arms, hands, hit it. Well, I guess we're awake now, huh? Good morning, guys.
You see the one and only appearance in the whole show of Elimination saying that, oh, he has to pee really badly, but no, you can hold it. And it's never addressed ever again in the rest of the show. He never goes to pee or anything. It's just, I mean, did he pee himself? Did he find a way to go during the day? It's never addressed.
I love reading comments where people are like, this scared me so bad as a kid. I thought he was going to pee his pants.
Well, they did love shooting water at you in attractions back then, so...
Oh,
the hydraulic fluid. It's 4D.
No, oh my God.
That's not hydraulic fluid.
Yeah.
He has to go downstairs and eat breakfast, but oh no, he's in too much of a hurry. Meanwhile, the stomach is screaming at him that, oh my God, I'm so hungry. Please go eat anything. And nope, we're just on our way to school as fast as we can. Get made fun of by our little sister. We almost run over a dog as we're running out the door. Make our way to school.
Memory indicates the presence of a small rabid poodle.
Yeah. That's a joke from the Colossal Pictures version where Captain Cortex is scared by a little dog, and then Memory and Imagination have to talk and say, oh, you're just imagining that this was a big scary dog. Memory remembers that this is actually a friendly dog instead of just a passing joke in the Cranium Command version. But he makes his way to school with seconds to spare.
I love the fact that he's late for the school bus and he's literally 35 seconds away from the school. If he just cuts through a backyard, like the school is literally right there. He's late for the bus. Oh no, it's for him.
He gets there with seconds to spare.
Okay, so we have the late Charles Grodin, who played the left brain.
Morning, Captain. Left brain reporting for duty, sir. Logic circuits working at full capacity. Let's have a safe and sane day, shall we?
Roger, left brain.
And the right brain, played by John Lovitz.
Right brain here, Buzz. Free association and creativity banks fully charged.
Roger, dude.
Hans and Franz from Saturday Night Live, Kevin Nealon and Dana Carvey playing the left ventricle and the right ventricle of the heart.
Hard reporting, Captain. Left ventricle. Right ventricle. We are off and pumping.
We have the adrenal gland as Bobcat Goldthwait.
Adrenal glands reporting, Captain. Ready to freak out at any second.
Not now, please.
We have the stomach as... Name just escaped me. Someone bail me out here.
George Wendt.
George Wendt.
Stomach reporting, Captain. Running on empty down here. Suppose we could toss down some of those cold pizza crusts from last night. Keep us,
Yeah, because you have the lungs that show up very briefly, and then whoever was the bathroom, like the bladder.
Jeff Duchette.
Okay.
The only reason the lungs even appear is because the lungs appeared in Colossal Pictures Cranium Command and they had them on the marquee. So they were like, we have to put something here. Like there's a spot for the lungs. And that's the only reason why they're even in that one scene. But
we should probably briefly talk about each of the celebrities or the roles that they played. I mean, Charles Grodin was certainly in the 70s and 80s was reliable box office character actor who was great at deadpan. So he was perfectly cast as that straight-laced. I mean, that's the role he played in. He's in The Incredible Shrinking Woman, which if people follow me on Twitter know I absolutely love. The 1978, I think, Lily Tomlin, Incredible Shrinking Woman, where he's her husband. Around the same time, he did a movie with Goldie Hawn and Chevy Chase called Seems Like Old Times. Where he's the straight-laced district attorney running for governor, and there's zany things happening around. That's always been his kind of shtick. Later in life, I think he may be the only character actor in there that has passed away since Cranium Command came out. I think they're all still alive otherwise, but he passed away a few years ago. And later in life,
what was the movie? Was it Midnight Run?
Oh, Midnight Run with Robert De Niro is one of the all-time greats. He did that year. He actually did Taking Care of Business with Dana Carvey. Two of the actors from Cranium Command acted together in the year. I think it was the year before. I think that movie came out in 1988. So, but great movies. I'm a huge Charles Grodin fan. So, and
I'm going to guess the younger generation probably knows him from the Beethoven movies as the dad.
He was in the Beethoven movies, and then he gave up acting, and he did a talk show on MSNBC for 7 or 8 years in the vein of like a Dick Cavett. Very low key, just nightly talking about the news and politics and having different guests on. And so he had kind of a second career where he decided for like 7 or 8 years, he'd host a Larry King style nightly talk show.
I remember him from The Great Muppet Caper.
Yes. He was in The Great Muppet. I mean, there was just, like I said, there's a span of about 20, 25 years of just terrific Charles Grodin films. So if you're not familiar, go out there and
we loved him as the security guard in the Muppets Go to Walt Disney World.
Yes, he did do an appearance in the Muppets Go to Walt Disney World. Hans and Franz, Dana Carvey and Kevin Nealon reprising their characters from Saturday Night Live. Huge at that time. I mean, that 88, 89, 90 period, Hans and Franz were one of the recurring skits that people looked forward to all the time. Basically a takeoff of Arnold Schwarzenegger. Both of them were supposed to be these Euro bodybuilder types who would belittle weak people. And so they were perfect there.
Additional Cranium Command trivia on the topic of Dana Carvey is his muscle suit from Cranium Command was gifted to the show director, Jerry Rees, who still owns it and still brings it out to use as a Halloween costume sometimes.
Well, it's good to know some of those props survive beyond the black market. George Wendt, Cheers was in its run then. Cheers was on from 82 to 93 on NBC. And it was one of the top shows on, I think it might have been the top comedy on television at the time. So that was a natural casting because Norm was the barfly who was, there at his stool every week on Cheers. Never went home, was always at the bar. So he would be your guy down there in the stomach. And who else did we say was there celebrity wise?
Bobcat Goldthwait.
Oh, Bobcat Goldthwait again.
Perfectly cast
for Mayhem, and for that.
Ready to freak out at any second.
Yes, that was always his shtick on stage. And in the Police Academy films, right? He was in a couple of the Police Academy films. And a terrific movie that people forget about called One Crazy Summer from 1985 with John Cusack, where John Cusack is an animator who does little cartoons. And it's about their summer that they spend on, I don't know, Nantucket or Cape Cod, and it is, as the title indicates, One Crazy Summer, one of those zany 1980s comedies.
You remember, Brian, and how we were out in California and the gentleman who filmed the Rolly interview was friends with the animator of that.
One Crazy Summer. Yes,
Crazy
I
Summer.
do remember
and I
that.
got in touch with him, and I actually have in my possession for
That's
my wife.
right. You bought one of the cells.
I have a cell and an original drawing from the movie, which is really cool. And then when we got it, we put it up on the screen and paused it. It was really cool.
And we don't know about the bit players and the other things. They weren't that famous, right?
So Bobcat, your one Disney connection for Bobcat Goldthwait was Hercules.
Yes.
Because was he Pain or Panic? I can't keep him straight.
Someone is going to listen to this and be like, "Oh, how stupid of you!" Obviously,
Yeah, I can't believe you did that. I want to say he was Panic because then Matt Fuhr was the other one. The guy that played was in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids as the next door neighbor, who was also Max Headroom. He was the other guy in her. But there's an infamous Bobcat Goldthwait movie called Shakes the Clown, which I will not describe. Just say go find it and watch it sometime.
Is that the one with Julie Brown in it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Enough of the Bobcat Goldthwait filmography here. Were any of the other actors that, like the principal or the teacher or his mom, any of them of any note, or were they just bit parts? I mean,
they were just bit parts. Scott Curtis himself is very sweet. If you listen to this, I love you, Scott Curtis. He was very, very excited that people cared about Buzzy in 2019. He reached out to everyone. He went on to become a realtor, which so did Annie's actress. Both of them became realtors, oddly enough. But he was just so thrilled that people still remembered who Buzzy was. He went to Epcot recently to be reunited and was very disappointed at the current state of it.
On a half shameless plug here, if you're interested in hearing more about Scott Curtis, several years ago, I did an interview with him that's up on my YouTube page. I need to mirror it to the Wonders YouTube at some point. I am about afraid to rewatch it because I feel like my voice is probably squeakier. I was a lot younger, but people seem to like it. I think there was some fun information shared there. If you are digging down the rabbit hole.
There's pre-show Dreamfinder guy and then attraction Dreamfinder
there
guy.
You go.
Two different voices. So
many people have wanted to point out that he does look like Buzzy too, like the animatronic.
He just has to get the glasses. That's it. He's got to get round glasses.
And you can't tell that he's also very small. So he's a bite-sized.
We should do mid-show here a shameless plug because we mentioned the Wonders of Life Archive. So you have a Twitter feed called Wonders of Life Archive, WOL_ archive, or is it just archive?
No underscore.
Just no underscore. So you do have plans to put all this in one place at some point, right?
We're working on it.
We're working on a website. It's just me and him. And we do this out of the love in our heart. But what we currently have is a very, very huge archive of top to bottom photos, concept art, source audio and video, press kits, magazine and book coverage, internal documents such as operation manuals, training materials, merchandise, blueprints, schematics, anything that has ever had Wonders of Life's name on it. We want to see it. You at home, if you have anything, please, we would love to see or hear, even if it's just your memories.
Every time I come across something or get something that we get in an auction block or somebody sends to us, I send it over to Bunny and she's like, no, got it. You know, sometimes that's not true. I was actually able to send her some press packet, an early press packet that had some stuff in it that she did not have. So we were happy about that. We don't even have a place yet to display all that stuff. That's in the offing. So
there's actually kind of a funny story there, because we had Disney's press kit on Wonders of Life, but what you sent us was MetLife's press kit on it, which they were two completely different things. So now they are united as one in our digital archive that will someday be out there for everybody to access. But in the meantime, if anybody wants to see anything specific, we are an open archive. Send us a message. We will send you whatever we have. We are more than happy to talk to people. Yes.
Like I said, this is my favorite thing in the world. I also, something that I love is just listening to people's memories of Wonders of Life. I didn't get to experience, so I want to know, what did it smell like? What did you feel when you were there? Were you happy? Did you feel a certain way? What are your memories of it? I love to hear that. I love to hear everything about it. I know it smelled like mildew. I know someone's about to tell me that, but
I don't remember that.
I'm trying to think of the only theater that comes to mind right now, correct me, but I mean, the theater that immediately comes to mind is the Monsters, Inc. laugh floor, in terms of that setup where it's a crescent shaped room where everybody's kind of looking at in front, but you would add in animatronics and a much more elaborate stage than you have there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else comparable.
Everyone tells me an old mall.
Yeah,
like an old dead.
The whole pavilion had that 90s, early 90s, late 80s mall food court feel to it, right? I mean, I think JT, I think we said that in the last episode. It screamed the colors and the
totally, and it had the street lamps in it that were weird, and it just was it just felt very mall like, and also science center like on the outside type thing with interactive stuff.
Because what happened is all of the malls built in the late 60s to the early 80s got these makeovers around the time of somewhere in the late 80s to early to mid 90s, and so the pavilion very much has the feel. I mean, it had to be I know we talked about this in the general episode previously. It was a stark contrast to walking into any other Epcot Future World pavilion in terms of the openness of it and the feel of it.
It's a weird combination of like circus and health. Like it's so weird. Yeah. I love it.
I've had it described to me by someone before, and I would love to shout them out here, but I don't know if they want their real name said, so I will say it's at Crazy 8 Wizard, I think is their hat. They described it to me as the ultimate liminal space, especially in its later years, because like you have that dead mall aesthetic with the main pavilion, and then you have that whole like abandoned medical facility vibe over at Body Wars, and then just there was so much going on there.
Totally tracks with it followed the malls.
Actually, I think it was at System_71. Brian Miles, you know them.
Yeah, Reese. That's our friend Reese.
Yes. I think it was them who said that. It may have been both of them.
Oh, I was just going to say that Wonders of Life really appeals to like Gen Z kids. We run a Wonders of Life Discord, and it's all like kids, which I love that they love it. And I get really upset when people on Twitter will be like, oh, you can't be a fan of it, you never experienced it. Like, how cool that someone enjoys this old thing. Like, I love that. It really appeals to that like aesthetic of creepy abandoned place that also is cool.
Well, it's still there too, kind of. You see it, but you can't.
It's skeleton.
Yeah, you can't get it. You never went in during Food and Wine or any of those?
I've
Really?
never been in the building. Yes. I've never even been in the building. I would do anything at this point. I don't care if I walk in and the building is full of soup. I'll grab a spoon. I don't care. I just want to go in the building.
I'd love to see it right now.
The Campbell's Soup Pavilion. I like it.
It's because the Play Pavilion logo looks like a macaroni. It's the Soup Pavilion.
Right.
I always hate when people disparage people that didn't get to enjoy things, because I know I've looked back at pictures from the 1964 World's Fair or the 1932 World's Fair or any World's Fair, or Montreal
or Disneyland before you got there in the 90s.
And you're well, that looks cool. I would have liked to have seen that. It's like, I'm curious about. So yes, that's the same exact thing as when, Gen Xer here looks at 1955 Disneyland. I'm like, I wonder what that would have been like. There's no way I never would have experienced that in a million years. Like, that's okay. Space Station XL1 or whatever. Sure, that would be cool to walk into. Why not?
I'm going to bring us back to the attraction here. So when we left off,
we were talking about the ride.
He was about to walk into his classroom. He had cut through some backyards and was getting to school.
You have exactly 2 seconds to get to class.
Cut to the right. Turn. Oh, there's our desk.
Okay, my little monsters. Let's create.
Just got into his chemistry class where he sat down and was late and found that he got paired with his lab partner, Annie.
Excuse me. Looks like we're going to be lab partners.
Yes! Howdy party, Captain. We have just skipped a beat. Yeah, what is going on up there?
She's beautiful.
Who is the new girl? Who is beautiful? No, Annie.
Dreamy. She's dreamy.
Yes. We see a weird headshot of her that's very clearly an official headshot of the actress as the Buzzy animatronic swoons over it, and all of the body parts.
Spotlights on the stage.
Just imagine.
Make my wish come true.
All of the body parts start talking about how beautiful she is.
I feel like an unstable compound whenever we look at her. Look at the way she glistens in the fluorescent tube lighting.
That was a great line.
Which he then, of course, gets so distracted by it that the chemistry blows up. He introduces himself.
Yes, that's beautiful. He introduces when she asks him his name, he says, "My name is Beautiful."
Bobby. It's a little strange to watch as an adult to see the adult SNL characters all be like, "Oh, this beautiful 12-year-old girl," but whatever. Suspension of disbelief. They're all parts of Bobby's body, so they're thinking as Bobby. And he introduces himself to Annie, and
his science experiment blows up, and then
I didn't get to see the show.
Yeah, he's saved by the bell
until Jerry Reese showed it to us.
There's a great cover with the smoke that allows him to do the transition from the one scene into going into lunch. So
yes, because it all had to be point of view. Jerry Reese did a very good job with that.
And we just hope that he's gotten to use the bathroom at some time between when he woke up and lunch.
So we go into the lunchroom finally, and finally the stomach will get to eat. Toss some food down in the old dumpster.
Say there, Captain, I'd be willing to call it even if we could just toss a little bit of food in the old dumpster. What do you say?
Okay, stomach, this time we'll eat.
But he runs into Tad and Rico, who are the bullies in the cafeteria giving Annie a hard time. So he decides he's going to be Mr. Big Shot and confront them. And
the
of course,
left brain and right brain are arguing over it and are like, tell the bullies how this is going to affect their academic standing. And then that sort of thing. And then, adrenal gland is freaking out about it. The right brain is like, oh, you swoop in and just save her. Eventually he decides to go up to them and be like, gentlemen, do you understand the repercussions of this on your academic standing? And they just beat the crap out of him.
The left brain's advice was not so great, but it's the one he took.
Yes.
You've got to give me a chance for revenge!
Okay, right brain, go!
and a food fight starts. Which, has anyone ever experienced a food fight, or is that just something that happened in movies?
I was going to ask the same question because they happen all the time in movies, and I don't ever remember experiencing one in school.
There was one allegedly at my middle school, which during a different lunch period, and it as you would expect, a middle school lunchroom, the rumor will, like, yeah, this one teacher, he had a kid in a headlock, and it was like this whole thing, and like, I mean, I think a couple things got thrown, but it wasn't like Animal House or anything like this.
Right.
It becomes very funny because it, like, you see the crosshairs as Bobby is looking to toss in the
even at when you see these viral videos of a McDonald's like a skirmish, it never results in a food fight with the whole restaurant. Or
I mean, I know people, it's got to be very difficult to do that effectively because people are not great throws. I mean, unless you're very practiced, you're going to miss.
A bunch of kids, though.
I got to tell you, though, when I'm sitting there having lunch, like, I want to eat. I don't want to throw my food. I want to eat it. I got to go back to class in 15 minutes.
Now, bear in mind, it is cafeteria food. So, most times it's not that good. So you're not losing a lot.
As we've discussed.
Well, I think we know what we need to do at the next Retro Magic event. We need to have a food fight at lunch.
Throwing sandwiches at people.
Oh no. God, that could poke someone in the eye, like take their eye clean out like a missile.
So how did you lose your eye? Well,
Retro
a bread
magic.
cone hit it.
Howard Bowers, take yourself right to the principal's office because of that suggestion.
He stops, and I believe he has food in his face, and it like drops dramatically, and he sees it's someone from the school. I think it's the secretary. Takes him to the principal's office, and
it's another good transition.
At this point, general knowledge comes in and is like,
"What the devil is going on, Flunky? Your job is to protect this body from unnecessary stress, not send it into a coma."
What are you doing? And just screams at Bobby or at Buzzy and tells him, like, you have to get this under control. You can't just do whatever thought comes into your head. The main idea of Cranium Command is that stress affects your body whether you want it to or not, whether you are imagining something is going on or something is actually going on.
And that is such a real thing that connects to as you get older. First time I watched it, I was a teenager, but as you get older, we're all at varying stages of aging, us four guys, and we do talk about medical anxiety and things like that. As you get older, you start to imagine things are wrong with you that you ultimately need a doctor or somebody to say, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, we've done all these tests and everything's fine. And at different points in life, different things become imagined. When you're a younger person, sometimes it's relationships, it's career stuff before that's settled. It's, any of those things, you can drive yourself into a frenzy from imagined stuff. And this attraction really drives that home so well.
Real stress or imagined stress, it doesn't matter beans to your body crew.
They can't tell the difference.
They can't tell the difference. It doesn't matter if you're just thinking something bad is happening or if something bad is actually happening. This is funny because I recently was in therapy, and my talking about how stressed out I was about my life, and my therapist was like, "Isn't that thing you're obsessed with about stress management?" And I was like, oh, you're right. And then we sat down and talked about what is the real stress in my life? What is the imagined stress in my life? So look at Cranium Command helping someone 30 years later. So that was one of the things MetLife wanted to do, was talk about how stress affects like metabolic functions, how it slows down your digestion. That was a lot more obvious in the Colossal Pictures Cranium Command version, where Captain Cortex like sees the stomach just sitting around, and he's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't have enough blood to digest anything because you're so stressed out. Turn and look into the camera. This is what happens when you are very stressed out. Eyes closed. So they have the food fight. Bobby gets taken to the principal's office, and this is when all the organs have their big freak out, start yelling at each other. The left brain is like, okay, you've ruined our chances at getting into a good college. Look what you did. The right brain is thinking they're going to take us to the salt mines, the big house, maybe even prison. The stomach's says that he's getting too backed up. He's going to have to start sending some stuff back up.
CLL exits. CLL exits.
Yes.
And then general knowledge cuts in.
General knowledge comes in and screams at him and is like, what are you doing? The heart, of course, is going crazy.
I might as well say goodbye now, sir. They're going to burn us at the stake and send our ashes to Siberia.
How dare you take my favorite line from Cranium Command and say it?
I just wanted to make sure it was said because I was afraid you would miss it.
No, Buzzy says they're going to burn us at the stake and send our ashes to Siberia. And of course, the adrenal gland shows up and just screams. He doesn't even say anything. He's just screaming.
My favorite was the hearts saying, if this was 30 years later, we would be attacking you.
Yes.
There's nothing like a great heart attack joke in the middle of the attraction.
General knowledge tells him that he has to be...
You're just worrying yourself sick. Real stress or imagined stress, it doesn't matter beans to your body crew. They can't tell the difference. Only you can. Take charge, lunkhead. Be calm, cool, collected, serene, balanced, centered, and relaxed, like me.
And so Buzzy says, okay, we have to get it together. I need to use my head, not lose my head. And he asks the left brain for, like, what is the bottom line? What is actually going on? And asks the right brain, like, what should I do? To explain to the principal why you did this. And he comes up with, we're going to tell the truth and do an emotional appeal. And so he tells the principal, I just did this because those guys were bothering Annie, and I'm really sorry about it. And the principal decides, okay, maybe if you just clean up, we won't get you in trouble. And so there's the whole thing with the imagined stress was imagining what was going to happen to him. The real stress was what was actually going on. They have the doesn't matter beans to your body crew, and then they have the animation of the beans on the scale. But he wipes his eyes and he shuffles his feet, and then he decides to tell the principal that. The principal's like, okay, you can just clean up. He's good. He goes out into the hallway and runs into Annie.
Were any of you ever sent to the principal's office for a bad reason? And if it was more than once, do you remember like the last age you were, like what grade or when it was that happened to you? I'll tell mine first. The last time it happened more than once in 12 years, but the last time I remember was in 9th grade, something like that. I was walking through the lobby with Ricky Miller, Ricky was about half my size because I'm a big dude. And he burped really loud and I gave him a playful shove and he fell over into like these chairs and like bruised his ribs and got really hurt. And I felt terrible about it, but Ricky's dad was a biker. And so Ricky's dad called the school and like wanted to talk to the principal. And so Ricky and I got called in and like, I did the emotional appeal. Like, look, this is my friend. I didn't like mean to hurt him. And his dad was really cool about it. And we ended up, I don't even remember. I might've gotten a detention or something out of it, but
that sounds like an 80s sitcom episode.
Yeah. That was my last visit to the principal's office for any reason. How you had to have gotten sent to the principal's office at least once.
I got sent my last trip to the principal's office. I think it was my senior year in high school. I had a teacher who, fortunately, I cannot remember his name because if I could remember it, I would absolutely put it out there. I remember it was our social studies class, and I got sent to the office for insubordination. Because I think there were 3 or 4 of us that we just could not stand the man. And it was supposed to be an advanced history class, and he was giving us ditto sheets and things, and we just couldn't tolerate it. And so I remember I had to write a 1,200 word essay or something about respect. And so I wrote this long essay about how respect isn't something that's automatically granted. Respect is something that's earned. Oh. And I'm sure that made him even more livid because he demanded that we respect him because of his position and who he was. And I had him, if I remember correctly, I had him in junior high school as a teacher and liked him just fine. But like he just didn't make the transition to high school at that level of class that he was supposed to be teaching. And so I ended up transferring out of the class into another teacher who became one of my favorite teachers. and I transferred into AP history, and like it was fantastic. So, but yeah, I stuck it out right into 12th grade.
I saw JT nodding when I asked the question.
My if I can recall right, it was only once, and I was in 2nd grade. I was chasing a kid around the playground. We were playing tag. He took off, got away, distance away. I came upon him. He had fallen off the mulch pit onto the blacktop. Face was bloodied, tooth was knocked out. I was accused of pushing him, even though I was nowhere near him. So they have me in the office going, "Look what you did to this poor child." And I'm like, I wasn't even near him. And they're grilling me. And I was like, I really wasn't. I don't know. And then the only reason I got off the hook is because they were looking for his tooth on the playground, and they realized our stories didn't line up, like where I tagged him versus where he fell. I got let off scot-free, rightfully so. But I remember being like, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't do this. It was quite nerve-wracking being grilled for something you didn't do.
Are we taking bets on whether Todd ever actually got sent to the principal's office?
I'm gonna say yes.
I'm thinking he paid someone off prior to getting there.
No, let's see. I got really in trouble for throwing up money from a fake money from a game. I think it was 1st grade. I threw it up in the air and yelled, "I'm rich! I'm rich!" I can't. I don't think I went to the principal's office. I did. However, I got we had a point system. When you get too many points,
sure,
it would be suspended.
Demerits, yeah.
Yeah, I got a point, guys. I hate to tell you, I was tardy 5 times a semester, just late driving to school. So sorry, there's not a lot to go on.
I do have one interesting story related to this. And I didn't go to the principal's office, and I should have. And for show and tell, I took my Fort Wilderness double barrel musket handgun in for show and tell. Even though it didn't do anything, and I didn't get in trouble. But I remember the teacher, I was showing her, and she held her hands up like, "No, don't point that at me." And I go, "It's not real. It's a toy."
Tell your age without telling your age.
Yes.
We could do an entire show on things that I never got sent to the principal's office for, but should have. But we're not going to do that one. How about either of our guests? Would you care to unburden yourselves with a visit to the principal's office? Or
Oh yeah, I was a principal's office frequent flyer in middle school and high school because I was a goth kid and I had very, very frequent dress code violations because I would have spikes on everything, and I would have big straps hanging off my pants and chains, and I looked like this was after Columbine, so it was like, oh no, you're putting people on edge by being so goth. And so I had to have several talks where they would sit down and be like, "You're making everyone nervous with your self-expression." But I just wanted to be cool. So no, I got ISS at one point where they stick you in a little cold trailer and have you like copy down, "I will not wear spikes on my clothes to school" type thing.
Yeah, I got in-school suspension once, but I don't remember what it's for anymore. It's a long time ago.
My last visit to the principal's office that I can remember came at the very end of my 8th grade year. It was literally like 2 or 3 days left of the whole school year. I was in our language arts classroom where we weren't doing anything. We were just sitting there because the teacher had given up. It was the end of the year. So I can sympathize with JT here for being accused of something that never happened. We had a small little computer section in one corner of the room, and I was on the exact opposite corner of the room. And we had a little security camera in there, so you could tell I was on the complete opposite side of the room. But this weird girl on the computer section of the room decides it's a good idea to spend the end of the year looking up explicit imagery on the computers and bypassing their like blocks. And so she got caught and called out, and she got sent to the principal's office. And when she got there, she said none other than, "Oh, Dreamfinder guy encouraged me. He told me to do it." And so I got called down there, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I was literally I could not be further away from her in that classroom. But the principal was like interrogating me and was like, "You better not lie. I have multiple people saying that you did this. I have witness testimonies." And I just kind of like, I don't think I laughed at her because I was too professional, but I was just like, "Oh, okay. pull the tape, look at the security camera. I didn't do anything, but
he was
sure, go off.
You were listening to your inner Charles Grodin there.
Yes.
But nothing ever came of it because I never got called back after that, and I started high school and was never heard about it again. So I imagine they just gave up on that or realized that I was correct. I don't even think the girl got in trouble for it because it was the end of the year and they're like, yeah, we don't care. But for me, they were like, this is serious expulsion level. And I'm like, I didn't do anything, but
maybe
sure.
even prison.
Well, we encourage all of you listening out there to email us your best sent to the principal's office story at podcast@retrowdw.com. But now we're going to go back to the attraction because Billy's getting out of the principal's office virtually scot-free.
Yes, and he sees Annie there, and they have their cute moment where...
Hi, Bobby. Look, I just wanted to thank you for helping me out with those guys who were hassling me. No sweat. No sweat. They were, pretty neat. He likes us.
Captain, we are having a sudden burst of energy.
Yeah, we are feeling young and hot. Hey, who ordered the butterflies?
Man, she's cute. Just look at the way her eyes glisten in that fluorescent tube lighting.
Well, let's not start daydreaming again. Let's do something constructive.
They decide he talks to left brain, right brain, and decides that he is going to ask her out now that he has made such a big show of coming in and saving her during the food fight. And so he says, do you want to go out sometime, maybe to the mall or something? Because, it was 1989. And she says yes and kisses him on the cheek. And that is when we have our big explosion of all of the fog coming in and the lights and super loud.
Maybe we could go out sometime after school, maybe to the mall or something. Okay, that'd be great. Thanks again, Bobby.
Outstanding, recruits! Look after your body crew and they'll serve you well. Congratulations! You are now a full-fledged member of the Cranium Command.
That is the end of Cranium Command. Buzzy turns around and gives us the speech of, remember, gang, when you get stressed out, just call on your general knowledge. General Knowledge appears and says that he's proud of him, which is a big deal because General Knowledge has spent the entire ride the entire attraction calling him fuzzy and drunky and scuzzy and all of that. And he finally calls him Buzzy and says that he's proud of him. And then he tells the chicken, which he has there, that he's going to have to find another pilot. And the chicken says, I'm going to go into politics, which is still relevant today.
I don't need one. I'm going into politics.
Yes. So,
let's hear it for Captain Buzzy! Hip hip hooray!
So remember, gang, if you get stressed out, just call in your general knowledge, balance your body crew, and get your cranium under command. Use your head, don't lose your head. It's easy. You'll be flying in no time. As a member of the Cranium Command. Bye!
Hypothalamus has some interesting commentary as people are walking out.
So when there's this section where he views himself in the reflection of the trophy case.
Oh yeah, and he does.
Does he do the one-handed arm up? Yay!
I think he does.
It is so it's so incredibly awkward, but also I understand that expresses the excitement.
It's so 80s. It's like a freeze frame.
It's like a Toyota commercial.
Yeah, it's the end of Breakfast Club.
Yes,
I was going to say that.
Yeah, Breakfast Club ends with,
and I think it actually freezes on that too.
Yes,
it does. Judd Nelson walking away, and
it is just like the end of Breakfast Club.
On behalf of the Cranium Commandos and the Walt Disney Company, thank you for volunteering for Cranium Command. Please gather your belongings and exit the command center through the doors on your left. Madam, you forgot your child. Oh, that's your husband? I'm very sorry. I mean that. Have a wonderful day.
So that is the end of Cranium Command. Then you exit out to a bunch of payphones if you want to call someone and tell them about the cool attraction that you just saw.
Guys, you got to do this. You got to listen to your body. Use your head there's all these things I just learned that are so important.
In the Colossal Pictures version, it's don't lose your head, use your head, which is just way more awkward. But they changed it around for that. And the Colossal Pictures version ends with a dance party, like a kids movie in the 2000s. Everyone just starts dancing.
Now's the time on Sprockets wenn wir dance.
Just golly. And so Cranium Command proceeded to be there for until Wonders of Life closed in 2007, and we all know what happened then.
Something getting stolen, right?
Yes.
Well, first it sat there for like
it sat there for
like
forever.
anything else though. Like it just amazes me that we aren't going to pay any maintenance on it. Yes. We're going to let it sit. We could be paying less money to the people to run the attraction and actually take, you know what I mean? Like kill it when it needs to be killed. Don't kill it for the sake of just closing something. Very odd.
Just one thing I do want to note, and then this is going to play into the Buzzy theft later and the reporting, is that the Buzzy animatronic went through many cosmetic changes throughout the time of it being there. His molded rubber hands, the Captain Cortex animatronic had gloves. Buzzy had the molded rubber hands, and they found that the animatronics kept wearing through Buzzy's hands, so he had like Terminator hands. So they had to replace them with brown fabric gloves that were lined. That they changed in 1992, I think. Also, yes. Strangely, he had very big glasses at first. They made them smaller because the glasses were too unstable, and they gave him eyelashes for some reason. In 1993, I think he got his eyelashes.
Lashes were in 93.
The only thing I can think of is maybe it made it easier to see his eyelid movement, because as I mentioned before, the Buzzy animatronic had so many problems with his one really lazy eye through his whole lifespan. They also had to change his jacket because the molded rubber hands only went so high, and then they had to give him like Sherpa cuffs on the jacket. But yeah, it closed, and then it proceeded to sit there as people came in and started picking parts off of him. In 2012, it was was that the 35th or the 30th?
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
Sorry, continue then. Go ahead, babe.
So Cranium Command sat there after the 2007 seasonal closure because they didn't know what to do with it. It was not, and this is our definitive we're closing it moment. It would just close for its seasonal run. And then operations had the great idea to be like, let's use this pavilion for festival space. And even then it was not decided that, oh, let's do this again another time. There was still not like defined Wonders of Life would be permanently closed. So it took until 2009 for the final call for them to be like, yeah, we're not going to open this again. So they went in there and they started picking stuff apart. They took any valuable show equipment that could be recycled or resold or sent to some storage warehouse. Stuff like show control units that could be used at different attractions and projectors and stuff like that. Anything that was worth salvaging was picked out of it. And it was at this time that the building had its last structural inspection. And they found that the roof was not stable at all. If you look at like old Google Earth aerials and stuff, they replaced that roof over and over and over again. And they realized it was a fire hazard to run the work lights while the roof leaked, because the water could end up in contact with those hot wires and then cause an electrical fire. So they were mandated to cut the work lights, and that's why whenever you see like other pictures or videos, it's super dark in there, because they weren't able to turn those work lights on. They had to run with show lighting, and that's why they had like a big spotlight, everything, and like set up individual lights just so that there would be lighting in there. And because it hadn't passed a structural inspection, they had to have signs on the doors being like, hey, don't come in here, we're not liable if you do. Even though it wasn't really that huge of a deal, it was just they were trying to cover themselves. So it was at that point that it was definitively closed, and they just left it sit. In 2012, on October 1st, on Epcot's 30th anniversary, someone went in there just after park close. It was open for food and wine. They walked into Cranium Command and jumped up onto the stage and grabbed Buzzy's gloves as a trophy, be like, hey, I got something from the old Cranium Command. And it was kind of symbolic.
Walked into it.
Yes, for that to happen on Epcot's 30th. And just after the park closed and 5 years after Cranium Command had closed. And this ended up causing a misunderstanding later on from the police report when Buzzy's clothes were taken, which we will get to in a moment, they thought, oh, they took his rubber hands too, even though his hands had been gone for so many years because they were switched out with those gloves originally due to maintenance concerns.
Because when you Google Epcot Buzzy, it's a picture of Buzzy from opening with his rubber hands. So when someone went in and stole Buzzy's gloves, when they went in and they saw Buzzy, he just had his bare animatronic hands, which he only had like 3 fingers on one hand and then like 2 on the other. They were like, oh my God, someone stole his hands. And that created just so much misinformation of people being like, they stole his hands. But when were the clothes stole, babe?
I believe in July of 2018. The jacket, the hat, and the headset, the undershirt and like the boots, which were really difficult to remove, they stayed, but the jacket.
So we were told. We were told.
So we were told.
We don't know that from experience.
According to the police report, they were sold to Robin Lopez, who, upon realizing they were stolen goods, returned them to the police, who returned them to Disney. So those clothes have been recovered, but that kind of spooked Disney when they went in there and saw, oh, somebody stole the whole outfit. The gloves are easy to miss because it's just like, oh, okay, the gloves are missing. That's whatever. It's not really a noticeable thing. And even if you do, it's who cares? But when the whole outfit.
The police report mentions I swear they just Googled Epcot Buzzy and they looked at the picture and they were like, there's a red light shining in the picture onto his brown jacket. And they were like, one red jacket missing.
The super sleuths are on the case.
I spend so many nights just watching footage of it, thinking that I'm going to see something out of the corner of my eye that I'm like, that's it. Like a detective in a movie, like I'm going to solve it. Continue, babe. Go ahead.
But anyway, after that, the animatronic sat there for a little while without the clothes, and it was just
kind of... He wasn't naked.
Yeah, it still had the green undershirt, but the jacket, the hat, and the headset were gone, and it was just kind of sad, him sitting there alone in the dark without his top layer. And then I am told, I want to say in October of that year, somebody reaches out to me and gives me a tip off the rumor mill. It's like, did you hear that the whole Buzzy animatronic went missing? And I was like, oh, I find that hard to believe, but thanks for the tip. And then all of a sudden, Patrick Spikes, who I was talking to at the time, he ends up getting corralled by the police. They show up at his house and they start searching for Buzzy, and they sent him a search warrant that says they were looking for a stolen Disney World animatronic. And so he texts me and was like, hey, remember a couple months ago when we were told that Buzzy got removed, he was stolen? And I was like, yeah, why? He was like, well, the police are here to talk to me about it. And so he was like, hey, how about you blow this up on Twitter? And it was Christmas Eve or something, or the day before Christmas Eve or something like that. So I make a post on Twitter. I erroneously refer to the Orange County Sheriff's Office as the Orange County Police Department and just throw out this post to be like, yeah, Buzzy is missing.
You were 14, right?
Something like that,
You're
yeah.
A little baby, little tiny baby.
Suddenly the story slowly got picked up by other sources, and it became this whole huge ordeal. And it's now that infamous story that, I mean, it even made a couple national headlines. And
there's a documentary coming out.
Yes. It was that time, that time an entire Disney World animatronic got stolen, and we have no leads ever since.
We don't
have theories. We have nothing to prove anything.
People
We've had
always
a lot
come
of
to
information told to us, but it's nothing we can ever confirm. It's just yeah, thanks for the tip. Sure, he just got dragged out the back of the building. That sounds a little hard to believe, but okay.
There were a lot of conversations at the time. I mean, I read a lot of this stuff. So let me add a little color to it, because when the story started to break, first there was a lot of disagreements over whether it had actually been stolen. And until the police report was made available, which I think was a week later or something like that, where they had actually, they detained Patrick Spikes. I don't remember if they arrested him. They eventually charged him with stealing some stuff, I think. But that's when some of these details became more official, and It wasn't just like a rumor, because there were no like pictures of the cutaway animatronic or anything at the time circulating. But I remember theoretical discussions from people who were saying, well, that piece had to weigh hundreds of pounds.
Buzzy was big. People don't take that into consideration. He was very big.
Do you know
very heavy.
The actual dimensions? Like, was he?
I would kill to see the schematics for that animatronic. I would do nasty, nasty things to see it. You have no idea. Like, I would love to know that about it. But I do have pictures of undisclosed people wearing pieces of the animatronic from which I can discern how large it is.
That's a step, because we've got the guy in the scene here, Todd. We can base, the height of the person wearing the outfit by chance, and then we can go from there.
I do. Yes, I do, unfortunately.
So we can measure the jacket, then go to the animatronic, Todd, and do this.
Todd's
I have to have a finger in every Buzzy pie. I feel like Black Widow sometimes, like talking to people like, oh, that's so interesting you did that. What do you know about the animatronic? Yes, I will have to send you that. But it's
the reason I raised the point was that like this was not just someone like just like hoisted it up and walked out the door. Like there had to be machinery involved.
I was to say, you need like a crane or something. Something's got to be.
Or he was severely broken, like dropping him off the thing somehow. Like,
well, he was cut out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So say you cut him, you're up there, and he weighs hundreds of pounds. Unless you're slowly hoisting him down, I mean, it had to be a push job,
Yeah, there was a lift below Buzzy, a maintenance lift that people would use to fix him while he was in service. And it doesn't look to have been used comparing pictures, because we have the video of dear Matt Sansois, who goes and just jumps under the stage at Cranium Command and looks at Buzzy and, films himself doing it because he's a millennial. And then we have the video of like after Buzzy was removed. So I spend so much time like watching these two side by side. Like, what am I going to see? Am I going to see something that's going to crack the case? People come to me in DFG all the time and are like, you guys know more than anyone else. What do you think happened? And we're like, we don't know. We honest to God don't know. The thing is, we can sit here and theorize all day about it, but you still go back to the fact that it was taken out. And how? There is a lot of controversy about it. I do not think Disney has it. I really, deep in my heart, I don't think Disney would let a false police report go on for 5 years about it and have people like actively from the police department looking for an animatronic if they just had it. I've been in contact with people in the archives. They don't have him. Like there's no hide nor hair of Buzzy.
I'd like to interject in here really quickly because I briefly mentioned earlier that people come to us with quote unquote tips. If any of our Disney or Orange County friends are listening in on this, if we had anything that was worth passing on, we would definitely pass it on. It's when somebody says like, oh, Buzzy's left arm is sitting in an office in the utilidor, and it's like,
he's under the Norway Pavilion. That was something we heard for a while. Was he was under the Norway Pavilion. And then people are like, someone put him in a stroller. Like, no.
This is like Jimmy Hoffa all over again.
The end zone of the Meadowlands.
Giant stadium, yeah.
And also people don't understand that Buzzy could not be removed from his chair. Like the animatronic is in the chair. He can't, all his tubing goes up his butt. You can't just remove him from it. So he was cut out in his chair. Wherever he is, the whole thing is with him. So goodness gracious, there's been so much misinformation because our associate Patrick Spikes loves drama, and he posted a picture of a pole that was made to make Buzzy's face, like a mold. And people took off and were like, oh my God, Patrick Spikes decapitated Buzzy and posted his picture online. And DFG and I have just spent so long being like, no, this was just used to make his face. I promise that's not what this is, because it became such a hot topic to make YouTubes and TikToks and ooh, look at this cool thing that happened. This animatronic got stolen, and it took off fast. And me and DFG were like, no, that's not what happened.
I mean, it has brought new interest to the attraction.
Yeah, me.
A decade after it closed. I mean, it was
for me. I love Buzzy, and I want people to remember him as a sweet character that taught an important lesson and not some weird animatronic that got stolen. So I feel like I'm not the kind of person that's like, Cranium Command was the best attraction, and if you don't like it, then blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I don't care if you like Cranium Command or not. Me personally, I think it was important, so I want other people to know about it, and I want people to know about it in a way that isn't sensationalized, because it's sensational enough. The story itself is crazy enough without adding in like, oh, Patrick Spikes decapitated Buzzy. Because it always goes back to the fact that it was taken. And Disney has no idea where it is. Like they don't even have any leads. There's no footage of it, nothing. I remember speaking to a couple people being like, they are never going to mention Cranium Command again because someone's going to know that someone made it out of Disney World with an entire animatronic and they have no idea who it was. Like that is bad optics. That looks horrible from a PR standpoint.
It's just not going to be a D23 topic.
No, I am fully prepared for them to never mention Cranium Command again, which again, I would do anything for the pre-show in HD. They've shown parts of it. They showed part of it in a Pete Docter interview, and we have lived off those like 2 seconds of footage.
Yeah, there's not really any good copies of the pre-show out there.
Anything with it.
Yeah. There's a lot to be hunting for. So you never know. Films pop up on eBay. We get some weird things. So maybe someday it will pop up.
That's why
the ones that restored.
There were physical copies of copies and copies and copies of that film somewhere.
Yeah,
that were backups and backups
me.
at the attraction. So someday something might show up.
Disney
Something
has
that
it, and
hurts
they
me
won't
is
let us.
knowing there was a film reel back there that was abandoned when they were stripping away stuff. And I know it sat there for several years. It was like sitting in a 5-gallon bucket. And I asked several people who I knew that were back there. It was like, hey, can you look at this for me, please? And I got a couple of responses. There was like, yeah, I saw that. It was just, there was standing water in it. It looked like the print was damaged. And I was like, yeah, the print may be damaged, but there may be parts of it that aren't, or something that could be salvageable. And I never even got to figure out what the heck it was. I imagine it's one of the eye screens, but it's just back then, before all this stuff blew up, I was like, yeah, it sure would be nice if someone would go back there and like catalog the stuff that's sitting there. And I was told that Disney went and rescued the prints that were in use when the attraction ended, and like made scans of those. And I was like, you would think they would have a master reel in their archives to scan from, but at the same time they have no master recording for the Universe of Energy area loop, so anything's possible. Maybe they did need to take those reels from the attraction.
They have it because they've shown parts of it at D23. They showed the whole
Never the
pre-show
main
at
show.
D23. Well,
They very extremely like take their archival of their animated works seriously, but the live action segments
Disney,
of a
what do
theme
I
park
have to
attraction. But
There's-
yes,
I mean-
we know they have them.
There's so many steps between the originals and then interpositives and then prints off. I mean, it's got to, some chunk of it.
Come on,
has gotta
Hal,
be
just give me a
someplace.
decent 35 millimeter. We can make it happen. We did that.
Disney
probably
restored
70s,
it.
right?
They restored it in the Pete Docter interview. It looks beautiful. Like it looks better than finding a cell of it.
I think I've been told that all of their animated works, they have gone back and done 4K master scans of, even like just one-off shorts like the Cranium Command pre-show. So they have a full HD restored print of it sitting on a server somewhere.
I mean, if they did Magic Journeys, they certainly did that.
Man, every time I see a couple clips of Magic Journeys played at a D23 thing, I'm just like, when are they going to let us watch the whole thing? I know they did in like 2015, but I wasn't in the fandom yet. Please.
What was
There's
the year where
no
they showed
good
the whole
quality.
pre-show?
I think it was either Attraction Rewind was 2016, right? Or was that the Amazing Adventures in Attraction Rewind? It was either 14 or 16. I think it was 14 that they ran Magic Journeys, but I know I was there. I mean, it was the first time I had seen it on a screen. So
In the Epcot 35th D23 event that they did in the Millennium Village building, this was actually where they debuted that Pete Docter video that Bunny is talking about. And I remember grabbing my camera, trying to take a bunch of pictures because I didn't think they were going to release it online. I was like, this is big. They're showing clips of the pre-show. This is good quality. And of course, they did release it online, thankfully. But at that same event, they showed a little clip of HD Magic Journeys. And I was like, wow, this is just the day that keeps on giving.
Didn't that clip end up as an extra on Inside Out? I think there's an interview with Pete Docter on one of the Blu-rays of it, I think for Inside Out, where they talk about, he worked on this, and that was kind of the
video had to like hold Pete Docter down and waterboard him to get him to admit he worked on Cranium Command because he was so hesitant to say that Inside Out was not like an original idea that he had.
I know, his freaking picture is in it though. Isn't he one of the heads?
He is one of the heads. Yeah. Golly goodness, I've spoken to so many people that have worked specifically on the pre-show too. Talked to Dave Frixma, talked to Nick Rierney, Andreas Dehat. Everyone loved it and thinks of it so fondly. Even thinking back on it from 30 years ago, I recently talked to the guy who animated the screens at the bottom, and he was willing to talk to me about how that was a very big turning point in his career doing something for Disney. Just anytime I reach out to someone, they're all very, very happy, unless I'm trying to talk to them about the Buzzy animatronic. And then I don't know, I think Disney took everyone aside and was like, don't you ever talk about that thing again, because people get real nervous if I start asking them about the Buzzy animatronic. I promise I don't have it.
I think part of it too is it's like a foxhole experience. If you were part of what became the final attraction, because it was that compressed 6 weeks, we got 6 weeks to fix this. We're going to live, sleep, eat, and breathe it for the next 6 weeks and get this thing up and running. And then it was a success that ended up running for 15 years, right? Almost 20 years that the attraction kept running. You tend to remember experiences like that more than stuff that just went normally and you spent 2 years on and finished it and moved on to the next thing. And when you experience something with that level of intensity, it tends to stick with you later in your career as you look back on the stuff that you did, and you remember those things better than the stuff that was like the run-of-the-mill things that you did every day.
I think another thing that could be part of why for the pre-show that animation was so important. This is 1989. Roger Rabbit is huge, and Disney did not animate that. They hired a completely different crew in England that eventually those people would come in. I mean, when Jerry Reese did Back to Neverland, that was not a Disney crew that animated that. And here they were producing animation that was better than what Disney was producing in doing. Mermaid was just starting to come out, but they were coming off of what's the cat one, dogs and cats, wasn't it like the Shakespeare
Rescuers
thing?
Down Under?
Yeah, they were doing Rescuers Down Under.
No, I'm sorry, the Billy Joel one.
Oliver and Company.
Oliver, they were coming off of Oliver and Company, which, I'm sure they were not excited about that. And then Disney goes and hires out these other teams, and they're doing Roger Rabbit and this stuff that is groundbreaking. And here's an opportunity for this little crew to do something to prove themselves that Disney feature animation can, look, we can compete with those guys. We can do this. We can be as good as they are. And that animation through that whole thing was great. And yeah, they did it as cheap as they could and as fast as they could. But it was, as you said, it was so phenomenal. It gave them the opportunity. Trousdale and who's the other gentleman? Gary Trousdale and
Kirk Wise and Gary
Kirk Wise. It gave them the opportunity to become, interim directors of Beauty and the Beast, and then eventually become official directors of Beauty. And that was the beginning of the Disney Renaissance. Yes. So I mean, really, I think for Disney anime, for really animated Disney animation, it's this was a keystone event. It was something that helped them turn the key and prove the fact that our team can do this. We we're in a rough patch, but like we are ready to move forward. And that started the second renaissance.
And they did it under so much pressure too, like 6 weeks.
Yeah. And even from the storyboarding perspective and doing all that stuff, it's like they really knocked it out of the park and showed like this team can get shit done.
It could have been very bad. I think about that sometimes. Like, what if that had happened to Food Rocks? What if it's some like last minute someone would have been like, "This is terrible, remake it," and we've got like a totally different ride. Like, what if we got Colossal Pictures Cranium Command? Would people be like, oh, hashtag find Captain Cortex? Would anyone care? Would it still be there? It's just like a so weird. The Buzzy theft itself feels like a Nexus event. I was gonna say the changing over from Colossal Pictures to Disney was a Nexus event, but man, the Buzzy theft really threw a wrench into things too.
Yeah.
And I am glad. People are always like, oh, aren't you like really, really upset that the animatronic is missing? Like, don't you wish you could get the person who did it? And it's like, it's a double-edged sword because I learned about Cranium Command through this. And so many other people have, and I've made so many friends. DFG is besides my husband, the most important man in my life, and I love him very dearly, and I wouldn't know him without Cranium Command connecting us. I saw him being very sad on his 15th birthday, so I did a little doodle of Buzzy and Figment holding a cake for him, and I watched his high school graduation on stream, and I've been with him through every major life event of the last 4 years. So it is very important to me in that regard. I love Wonders because there's absolutely no way any of that could happen today. You can't have a health or medical pavilion. You can't have a sex ed video at Disney World. Like, it's such a specific time period. Just everything about it from start to finish. The aesthetic, the content. I love it. It's like a little time capsule. And I love Wonders because it has come and gone. I do not feel very sad about it being gone because nothing can ever change the fact that it existed. Nothing can ever change the attractions that were in there because they happened and they came and they went. So I am glad that that happened. I am at peace with it.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll pick up there with Bunny's summary of the pavilion. I don't think we can thank you both enough for taking everyone who listens and on a walkthrough through Cranium Command, certainly the most iconic and lasting impression of an attraction there, even though it wasn't the most promoted attraction at the pavilion's outset. I think it's the one people will remember the most now, far more than Body Wars, which was the one that they really promoted, more for the technology of the ride than the actual experience of the ride. So thank you to both of you. Before you leave, I know we talked about it a few times. Tell everybody listening where to find you on the web, both your archive and yourselves, your social media accounts and whatnot.
Well, I am at Dreamfinder Guy on Twitter. That's pretty much the only platform I use. The Wonders page can be found at WOL Archive. And of course, the lovely Bunny Wars
is at Bunny_Wars, and you do not have to follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is very cringe. All I do is I go on there and I post about how much I love Buzzy, and I draw stuff sometimes. But follow the Wonders page.
Yeah, and I'm going to say her drawings are fantastic.
Absolutely.
She's an amazing artist, and I mean, now that you've had a chance to actually like get something from Dave, it's like I think that you guys are not only the premier people that understand this, but like you are the best Buzzy artist that is out there working today.
Buzzy's designer said that I was good at drawing him, so I live with that forever.
And I don't want you to go without promoting your TeePublic because you've recreated some terrific merchandise from Epcot's past. So
because there are like 2 Cranium Command shirts that ever existed, and I have redrawn both of them because goodness gracious, and the Wonder sweater because, you know, I'm not going to pay $500 for a sweatshirt. So, and I have a bunch of original designs on there. But yeah,
and although I'm not wearing it, I have the Figment Girl Watcher shirt. It was a towel at one point.
No, it was a shirt.
Oh, was it a shirt? I thought it was a towel.
No, that's the towel where Figment's in a bathing suit.
Well, to be fair, she made both Girl Watcher and Boy Watcher. So
I did to be LGBT friendly. But yeah, if you want to look at a bunch of really nice drawings of old Epcot characters where they look mysteriously hot for no reason, you can follow my Twitter.
All right. Now you can wrap up, Todd.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate both of you joining, as everybody said here. This has been great. Now, how you did some Cranium Command shirts. We just talked about Bunny's art. What are you going to reach into the bag here? Is there anything else you've got left for Wonders of Life?
You know what? I guess I got to go. I looked back and I saw that we did that back in November of this year. So I think we need. And actually, I was going to do the sweatshirt, and I'm so glad Bunny did it, because that means I don't have to, because I'm sure that was a pain.
I had to learn Illustrator to do it.
Yeah.
She's saving us time.
Absolutely. And she did a fantastic job. So
It's
I'm like,
such a good design.
yeah. And so it's like so different. It's like so off-brand compared to the rest of the Wonders of Life stuff.
And you absolutely know that the impetus for the design was MetLife being like, we want to be able to give stuff to our guests and to our executives, and we want a sweatsuit that with matching top and pants. And
I mean, if you're going to tell people to go work out, you want to look as good as you can.
They say like
working out.
Wonders of Life down the side of the leg. It wasn't the 2000s, so it doesn't say Wonders of Life across the butt, but I think that would have been better.
This is the wonder of life right here. How about a Buzzy moving team shirt? Like we move.
There you go.
Some hydraulic fluid dripping on the bottom.
That's actually a really good idea.
Handle with care.
I'm writing
Buzzy's
that down.
just a hydraulic fluid, like oil can or something.
Just a missing poster. I mean, a missing poster with Buzzy.
Oh, that's been done but like 30,000 times though.
Yeah.
Mr. Dairy Goods with Buzzy on it.
I've been told that some of those Buzzy missing fan art things have made it to the halls of WEI Florida and ended up being taken down because senior management was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, we've been told by former Imagineers that the other Imagineers really love our archive and that we care so much about it because Disney doesn't. That is why we do it.
That was a high honor hearing from like members of the Play Project team. Just that really cool to know that our work is appreciated.
My highest honor. Oh, sorry, continue.
From the very beginning since I started this page, we're going on 6 years now. I've just wanted to have a place where people can go so they don't have to do the exhaustive research that we do. It's just like, this is all here. We did it. Nobody else has to. I mean, you can feel free to knock yourself out, but we're trying to take the work out of it.
You want to see what the carpet looked like at Wonders? We got you. You want to see the bathroom fixtures? We got you. You want to read the training manual? We got you. My highest honor that I want to print out and get framed is when Dave Ensign said that he thinks what we are doing is the same as what he did for Horizons. That is like...
It's 100% true. And you guys recognized at a certain point that, somebody has to take ownership of this particular pavilion.
No one else cares about it.
No, that's not true. I mean, I think you found over time that people do.
Oh, yeah.
They just don't have the time or the, inclination a lot of the times. But when it's all there in one place, they know where to go to look for it.
I was interviewing someone recently, and they were who worked on Cranium Command, and he was like, so do you have a real life? And I was like, yes, I promise I do. I just love this one thing. If you have something that makes you happy, you grab it and you wring every little bit of serotonin you possibly can out of it until it's shriveled up and dead. That's what I do with Wonders of Life.
Well, it's like all the things that we do here at Restore. Yeah, I mean, you do it and you put as much effort in as you can on it and hope that the product comes out good.
It's always great to hear from people years after we've put something out that somebody finds something and says, hey, like we get a comment on something from 2014.
Yeah.
And then we're all talking like, what are they talking about? Like, oh, that thing. Yeah, I remember when we put that out there.
Even if I go a while without thinking about Wonders, like we'll have one thing and I'm like, don't wake daddy, like straight up. I sit up and I'm here and I'm doing research. Like I get one little bit of it and I'm like, be up forever researching this. And a huge issue that we run into is we're like, oh, let me contact this person, and they're dead because so many people.
It was over 30 years ago. So yep, that happens.
Well, once again, thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. We'll be going back next month to something else. I don't think we've determined our
next month is Jerry Reese.
That's right. Jerry Reese
talked to us for
all the
2 hours about Cranium Command. So.
If people are not tired of Wonders of Life.
I like to think that we have helped a little bit making people care about it. Even if it's just a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, thanks to all of our listeners, Bonnie and DFG. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. And as always, if you find these things interesting, give us a shout out. And I'm out of
You
Bro, you can
turn
start
into a
pushing
pumpkin
Amazon
after midnight.
now.
Well, it is after midnight. I'm tired. Yeah,
after midnight. Todd's
iTunes
like,
review,
he's like
find
the
us.
Buzzy animatronic after they close their eyes.
He's leaking fluid.
Yeah,
One eye is like
one eye's drooping.
Yep. So if you can give us a shout out in iTunes or your favorite podcasting app, please do. As always, we thank you for all your everything you send us. And JT, where can they find us? Write to us. Fill up that mailbag.
Podcast at retrowdw.com.
That's right. Send it all in, and maybe your letter can be on.
I expect a mailbag full of sent to the principal's office stories next month. But if we don't get that, one of the things that we are missing, because Bunny and I have talked about it ad nausea, is a good picture of the Pure and Simple menu.
Yes. Oh my God, that
Just
Pure and
nothing
Simple
but like
menu.
blurry background photos. We need a good picture of the early years when it was a fully functioning food service venue in there, and had chili, all that stuff Keith Keogh worked on and talked to us about.
Oh yeah.
For that pavilion, the Wonder Waffle and all those things that came with a fruit compote in the beginning instead of syrup. By the end, they had just given it up and just gave you syrup with it, and it was a regular waffle. But
If you or someone you know went into the Wonders of Life Pavilion,
and
we want to hear about it.
and use the film camera to take a photograph of a menu.
No, if you
board,
did
please
anything,
let
I
us
want to
know.
hear
Yeah.
about it.
Yes, well, that too.
That's right. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll be back next month with Jerry Reese talking a little bit about Cranium Command, and we'll be researching more. So thank you very much to all of our listeners. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History, and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com, and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter at WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram at GoAwayGreen, JT Kujar on Twitter at LS1JT, and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.